Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Cece Storino. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, which is the Mama Saga. And this is the channel where I'm a mom by day, but I'm also someone who breaks down comic book sagas, Marvel, and the MCU and Disney Plus series by night. Let me say off the jump, spoiler alert, major spoilers, okay? You'd expect me to say this all the time, but I'm going to say this up front and I'll defend what I'm saying in a minute. Mutants are now confirmed in the MCU. Okay, I have to say that up front. The Uncanny X-Men back in 1986 is the reason why I got into comic books in the first place. And I am just beyond over the moon that they finally confirmed it. They made a big deal about it in this episode. And if you didn't see the episode, you have to make sure, ideally, that you watch the whole series and then circle back to understand how we got here. And you may or may not have seen articles that were out there where Kevin Feige was doing interviews that had to do with, the then upcoming Miss Marvel series. And he said off the jump, they had to change her powers. They had to change some of her backstory, especially as it fit her powers, to make her match more where the MCU was and where they needed her to be. And that it was going to affect everything, that Miss Marvel itself was going to have a huge effect on the MCU. And people theorized a whole bunch of stuff about what that meant. And of course, I've already said the spoilers. We were talking about like the Inhumans. Like, I'm on this channel doing a live at least once a week, and then you typically get like a bunch of pre-edited videos from myself and my video editor Barney. And so, we have been talking, my community and I, in the comments and during lives and stuff, about how Kamala's powers weren't really that of an Inhuman. They didn't bring in Terrigenesis and the Inhumans and stuff like that specifically, but they did specifically make mention to mutants and the fact that, and we'll get to this in a little bit, that Miss Marvel and her family are mutants, that they have mutated genes. So this is super exciting. I totally underestimated what Kevin Feige was saying, but you have to really be grateful that they kind of hold things back and they tease things, and sometimes they downplay things, so that when you get to that moment where you're like, holy moly, she's a mutant, like your jaw just leaves a dent in the floor from where it dropped. So because Uncanny X-Men back in 1986 got me involved in Marvel to begin with, and I loved Marvel long before Marvel was cool, I really do have to tell you, long before the MCU, long before the original Iron Man movie, I have to tell you, I've just been waiting with bated breath for them to even just open the door to kind of make mutants canon. And I know the whole thing about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and how they showed the Illuminati and stuff like that. And like, yes, we did see Professor X in there, obviously a mutant, but that was another, whole different Earth. That was a whole different, this is Earth 616. So we finally do have like an introduction to the fact that there's mutants on Earth 616. And Bruno's the one that actually outs that to Kamala. So I love it. But we will get to that more in just a second. But again, I open this live stream with spoilers. Let me put this down here in the comments too, just to kind of do a little bit of CYA, because people will come and go, I'm sure. Let's see. Spoilers, of course. Huge news. Regardless, I even mentioned it at the beginning of the live. So you've been warned. You've been warned, okay? I'm just going to put this here too. Oops, typo. Okay, so that was the first big deal. There's another big deal. There's two other big deals in connection with this episode. Of course, it's the finale. You would expect that they're going to, if they're going to do anything extra special, now's the time to do it. I'll get to the post-credit scenes in a little bit, the post-credit scene in a little bit. So the name of this episode is No Normal. And the episode is basically billed as Back in Jersey, Kamala fights to save her friends from the clutches of damage control. I know that some people, as of the last episode 5, were like, the clandestines are basically all dead. Like, weren't they supposed to be the big bad? They killed off Aisha and all that stuff. Like, I don't understand. Department of Damage Control, wah, wah. I've got my theories about why it's important to really just officially have the Department of Damage Control be the big bad. And, they're definitely going to factor in continuously as we go through the end of phase 4 and into phases 5 and 6. I'll definitely do a separate pre-edited video, not a live, I don't think, that will discuss why I think that this is important and how I think they're going to factor into certain Disney Plus properties and not just the MCU proper. It does start off with a warning that there's going to be some scenes in the episode that might disturb some viewers, so that's kind of ominous, but I guess that's good CYA. And so we're there, the scene opens after a quick, reintroduction of the backstory to kind of catch up. We're at this Jersey City, the Circle Q. There's all the explosion aftermath. Both the cops are there and the Department of Damage Control are there. And you've got Agent Sadie Deaver, and she's like, this is what happens when the wrong people get powers. And it's easy for someone to draw the conclusion off the jump that she might be throwing a diss towards Muslims having powers or whatever. So there's an agent next to her that's a stand-in for the audience going, wrong people. And she goes, Agent Deaver is like, kids. So she clarifies that it's kids. This is kind of important because if you've gone through the Marvel comic book saga of Miss Marvel, you know that there's this whole thing where, it's not the Department of Damage Control, but it's Cradle. That's a different organization, a different acronym, where it's kind of Department of Damage Control like, and you have Cradle going after a bunch of underage, like under 21 years of age mutants that included Kamala, but also included like Spider-Man and Ironheart and, the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man, I should clarify. So like Department of Damage Control complaining about kids having superpowers and the aftermath that they have to clean up. That's kind of a comic book callback to Cradle and that whole scene. So if you've not read the Miss Marvel comic books, you should anyway, but my goodness. So that was kind of like a hint. And I wonder how they're going to develop that. Is the Department of Damage Control just going to be a stand-in for Cradle later on? That's a good possibility because you do have a lot of folks that can join the Young Avengers that have been introduced once to more than once throughout the MCU and the Disney Plus series, starting with Scarlet Witch's twins. So then Agent Deaver's like telling the other agent to round everybody up before anybody else gets hurt. The cops are securing the scene, otherwise like regular cops for Jersey City. And she does stress that she doesn't want the kid hurt. Right now she thinks it's one kid. She doesn't want the kid hurt. She wants Kamran taken in alive so she can figure out what he is, okay? So it's not shoot to kill, but it still gets kind of messy as the episode plays out. So then the scene shifts to Bruno and Kamran. They're on a subway. At one point they're thinking maybe they're going to head towards Penn Station. But Kamran's like grabbing one of the poles or the posts in the subway car, and his left hand goes blue, and bright blue Nor like covers where he's touched the pole. So people are seeing it. They're getting freaked out. Bruno's trying to be nice. He's trying to keep Kamran calm, says it's no big deal. Kamala struggled with her powers when she first got them. So chill. He's being supportive and kind. So if you saw what happened in episode 5, that's kind of nice. But you're wondering, is Kamran going to do a heel turn? Are they building everything up to be nice, just to shatter it on the ground? This is really good storytelling. So Department of DODC agents are in there. They see what's going on with the pole, and so they start chasing after the boys. They come into contact with somebody else, they crash into them, and he pushes them back, because that'll happen in New York and New Jersey. If you're on subways, folks don't dig it, so they're going to shove you back. Kamran's powers shoot out his one arm. He takes out a subway car window. Now everybody's freaked. DODC's freaked. The boys keep running. And then you have the opening Marvel montage. Now, this is my first initial fresh viewing run through. So I didn't sit there and pause to see what all the different Miss Marvel screens look like. I can do that later. I'm just so excited about Mutants officially being in Earth 616 canon. I can't even get over it. So then let's see. We're back at the con home. Everyone's going through like the luggage and all the shopping that Muniba's done, because they established her to be like a big old shopper and stuff like that. Taisha's trying to figure out what she likes. And then Kamala says that she has an announcement to make. Now, you would put yourself in her shoes. This is a big moment. Like, she knows her mother knows, and they're clearly just back from Pakistan, because you can see the luggage is open. Like, they haven't been home long. So she wants to like get this off her chest, confess to her parents, oh my goodness, to her whole family. Her mother knows. So she apologizes up front for what happened at Amir and Tisha's wedding and for sneaking out at Avenger Con. And then like Kamala like squares herself with everybody sitting in the living room watching her. And she's like, I am the light girl, right? She doesn't want to call herself Nightlight. She hates that name. Hero music swells in the background. It's like, if this was going to be your moment, you would think that this is how it's going to play out, and everybody's going to be like, ooh. And she starts to position her hands like she's going to fire up and show everybody her powers, and then it's all ruined, because this is probably how things would go in real life if you were telling your family about the powers. It turns out that the mother's told everybody, and everybody's told everybody else. And Kamala's like all crushed. And her brother Amir is just like, it's the classic con gossip, train, relax, But meanwhile, she's like, you stole my moment, which is totally what would happen if this happened in real life. So that is the best. Hey, Rami, what's going on? Hey, Mama. Hey, Rami, what's going on? Oh, did I freeze? Okay, I froze for a second. Hey, Rami, what's going on? Good to see you here. I always appreciate seeing you here. I hope you saw the whole episode. I don't want to, spoilers galore. Spoiler warnings galore, because this is huge. If you saw the episode, 3 major things were outed. One more Easter egg style, and then 2 things were outed huge. You've seen it twice so far? Dude, you're so lucky. It came out at 3 where I am, 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I couldn't get in for like a good 15, 20 minutes. And then I like stop and pause and take notes. This is my first reaction to everything, but oh my God, I can't believe what they caught. So there's 2 major announcements that were made really during this, and it changes everything. So I'm so excited. So, oh God. So they're busting her chops, and this gets called back later. Amir's like, did you drop the kid on purpose? Remember her rescue that got botched in episode 2? Or was that like part of an overall game plan? So nobody is paying her any respect in her household. They're all chop busting. They all knew. They're all gossiping. And she's like, this is all ruined, And this is different than the comics. Rami might know. Other people watching live or on the replay might know. This is like showing up a little bit different than how the comics did it. In the comics, Muniba kind of figured it out on her own, but stayed quiet for a while. And then eventually, like, Kamala goes to tell her mother very late in the game in the comic book saga, like, comparatively speaking. And the mother's like, I figured it out. Every time you weren't around and I caught you sneaking out and things were getting fixed in Jersey City, I kind of put 2 and 2 together, and I'm okay as long as you're doing the right thing, right? Yusuf, to me, was kind of in the dark for a long time in the comic book saga. But all right, we're back in the Disney Plus version of this story. And so importantly, Yusuf is supporting his daughter like a good father would. He's telling her that he's proud of her. We're all in awe of you. I just want to make sure that you're being careful out there, which is totally reasonable. I love this family. I cannot get enough of them. And he goes, just because you can do all of these amazing things doesn't mean you can go out to volunteer to find trouble, right? Like, I just worry. But that's a natural parent reaction. What I love, well, first, Kamala's like, Abu, I don't think you raised me to just sit by when I can help people. This becomes an open loop that he closes himself towards the end of this episode. And again, I just love the story writing here. But what I love, though, is Muniba's character arc goes from being the uptight mother where everything's no, no, no in episode 1 to she's being very supportive in episode 6. And she's like, and we trust her, right? You know, so she's like piggybacking on what her daughter says. Like, she's got to go out there and help if she's got these powers. And, you know, now Muniba's like her wingman, and you see even more of that as the episode plays out. Then Amir is like, why is Nakia FaceTiming me? So it's important that she's FaceTiming Kamala's brother. They all kind of grew up together. So it's not, to me, freakish that he would have her number. But it's important in the storytelling to show that Nakia is still pissed at Kamala. She clearly hasn't called her back. She's not calling Kamala directly. She's just, she's calling to catch up to find Bruno. But Kamala takes her brother's phone and she basically is like, we don't have time for this right now, because Kamala's trying to apologize. And she's like, have you heard from Bruno? But Kamala has not. And Naki's like, I've been trying to get a hold of him because the Circle Q exploded. Then the opening sequences from Miss Marvel flashes. Again, this is my first run through reaction. I'll go back and try to figure out what all the screens show individually. But then we go to Kamala being in her room and she's trying to call Bruno and it goes directly to voicemail. So clearly Naki is like loaded up the voicemail. He had said his grandmother was out of town, so I don't think she's calling him. Muniba comes into the bedroom and she's like, you're not going anywhere, not dressed like that. Now, I love what she does for 2 reasons. Number 1, she presents her daughter with a box and she's made a costume for Kamala that is definitely way, way more comic book accurate. But I love that the costume is presented to her daughter in a toffee box. If you watched episode 5, you know how important toffee is in the bloodline of the women in the Khan family. You know that, like, Muniba loved toffee. And, you know, she loved it so much that after she left with her family to America, her mother kept boxes of toffee in the house, kind of like, you know, as heart balm for herself because her daughter left the country with her family. But also just in case Muniba came back, Sana wanted to make sure that she had her toffee and then ate most of it because that's what most of us would do through the years. But I love how the uniform or the outfit is being given to Kamala in that box. It shows like love, right? It shows I love you, I'm thinking of you, and I'm being supportive. So it's Kamala's new uniform. We've gone from the big Hulk, little Hulk stuff that was going on in episode 1, where it was like so garish and so different than what Kamala would have wanted, to her mother making a costume that is pitch perfect for what Kamala wanted. And she's kept the mask that Bruno made her. Hold on. Rami says, I loved Muniba's turnaround. This scene was wonderful in every aspect. Oh my God. I was like crying. I love this family. This is some of the best storytelling I've seen, period, in the whole MCU-ish of things, but definitely in the whole Disney Plus of things too. So I love how the mother's like, this feels a bit more like you. And it's wrapped in like the red cloth or sash that Red Dagger had given Kamala. And it's important that that's a piece of her costume too, because everything that the Red Daggers have gone through with her and she with them, and then Bruno's an important part of her life and someone that she does deeply care for. It's important that you have all of these pieces. But with the mother creating this costume and gifting it to her daughter, to me, it signifies her complete approval. Her character arc is completed in terms of coming to accept not just that her daughter is different and is living a life that's different from what she would have her do, but that this is all like, instead of it being haram, it's something that she deeply, deeply appreciates. You know, it's not abnormal. It's something she's come to accept. So I love this. This is such a gorgeous scene, and it's so well and tastefully written. So the mother and daughter embraced, and then we're backed off at like the roped off explosion site at the Circle Q. Kamala goes there. She draws the attention of the crowd by casting her hard light discs and running through the sky, and everyone's looking, and that's distracting everybody. And I love that she's got her red Converse sneakers on, because that to me is important for this reason. Each piece of her costume is important in different ways. Like I said, the red sash is from the Red Daggers, and but the important thing is she's kept a little bit of herself in here. She hasn't completely lost herself or discarded the original part of her that started through her own metamorphosis, her own character arc throughout this series. So the red Converse is still a nod to her just being her own American version of a cool teenager, and she's not going to drop that. She stops at the Grove Street Southeast Road, waiting at the red light. She's up in the air on red discs, and there's a red light, and she stops like she has to stop in traffic, which is hilarious. And then when it goes green, she keeps running. The Jetsons aren't here. There's nobody else flying around in the sky right now, but whatever. It was funny. And by the way, I would note the original directors from episodes 1 and 2 directed this last episode. So if it starts to feel a little bit like the beginning of the series, it's because it should. They've got their fingerprint all over it. Bruno takes Kamran to the mosque. The entrance is gated shut, but they're both admitted by Nakia. Don't forget, she's on the board now, so I'd imagine she could do it. But she's like, you can't hide here. You can't stay here. And Bruno is clearly an outsider when he's like, but mosques are houses of worship, so they should all be safe there, right? And she's like, this is a mosque in America. Okay, the Department of Damage Control, the CDC, even the sanitation department likely has us under surveillance. And although it's a bitter line for her to utter, you'd kind of be naive not to think that there's a possibility that that's very true, right? So Nakia offers to call Kamala over so that she can join up with everyone and help. But Bruno and Kamran should really be making their way to the high school. And Bruno's like, why would we go there? And she's like, because it's guaranteed to be empty on a Saturday. So then you see a parade of like DODC vehicles pull up. Agent Deaver is entering the mosque again. And just like in a previous episode, she shows she doesn't care. She's walking on, the carpet, the interior of the mosque with her shoes on. After Sheikh Abdullah made a big deal to her the last time that she came, that the next time she comes, she should have her shoes off. So it's kind of already closing the loop of storytelling in this episode, where Nakia says they don't respect us. And no, they clearly don't, which is so sad. She no sooner does Agent Deaver ask everybody to present their IDs, they're already presenting it, which also shows you, sadly, that these folk are used to being under surveillance and used to having to produce their IDs, right? So they're like, whatever, here you go. But they're all clearly stalling her. Even one guy's like, here, try my cookies. Nutmeg is my secret ingredient. So now I have to go and make chocolate chip cookies with nutmeg because he did. I'm like, what am I missing out on? And she's basically warning that they're all in danger, that they shouldn't be helping this guy. If that's what they're doing, they're aiding and abetting somebody who's dangerous. He's a serious threat to them. He's not on your side is what she's trying to do. But Sheikh Abdullah says something very beautiful. He's like, I'm not concerned about who's on my side. I'm not even concerned if God is on my side. As long as I am on his side, meaning God's side. And I love how he's talking to her. They're both framed out in this image. And you see the light streaming through, all golden and beautiful, from the outside in. And he's more lit up than she is for obvious reasons, because he's more enlightened than she is. And faith is so key here. It's kind of been very tastefully sprinkled throughout a lot of the 6 episodes now. And Sheikh Abdullah concludes, God is always right. And Agent Deaver, she's all dressed in black. She's not golden. She's not enlightened or illuminated. She goes, I don't have time for Quranic quotes. And as she stalks off with her crew, Sheikh Abdullah corrects her and says, actually, that was Abraham Lincoln. And I love that. He's putting her in her place in a very classy and tasteful way, as any true leader should. So she tells the agents to go through every door, every room. If it's a door is locked, break the lock. She doesn't care. And Naki is stalling them. I'm not even going to go through that scene. It's silly. But they're aggravated because she keeps stalling. And Sheikh Abdullah, in the meantime, is taking the boys out of hiding in a different area of the mosque and getting them to go out. Kamran, by the way, is very, very injured, very weak. He's struggling. As the boys leave, Sheikh's like, and remember, just because someone treats you like an enemy doesn't give you the right to treat them as yours. I think this is so huge in terms of not only is this a tasteful religious leader's like guidance to them, and it's so well done, it also plays out in this episode as well in terms of the decisions that Kamala makes. And Kamala's not even there when he said this to Bruno and Kamran, but it's the decisions that Kamran makes, the regrets he kind of has. You can tell he's worried and concerned when he starts to see the aftermath of what he does. It's just so good. I love how that kind of like guides where a lot of the characters are going as this episode continues to go. But then, funnily enough, after he gives this really great, wholesome advice, he's like, wait, you need a disguise. And he gives both boys a hat. Like, that's going to totally change their appearance, right? They're both black hats with a white word on them, same white word, halal. Which I know halal is something that, meat can have. And it's like okay for consumption in the Islamic faith. I believe it's animals where it has to do with, it's associated with animals that are killed in such a way that they don't feel pain and suffering and worry, because there's an understanding that those emotions could impregnate the meat. But I have to admit, this is my first raw reaction, so I haven't looked up the meaning of the word halal. Rami says his advice fits the MCU in general, and quite well, if you ask me. I agree. And I think this is like something with Spider-Man, where he often says, I don't kill people. And generally he does not, right? It's a big thing because he's a true hero. He's not trying to play judge, jury, and executioner. He's just trying to stop bad guys from doing bad things. And although I personally am not anywhere near as deep into DC as I am as Marvel, because I've been a Marvel freak since 1986, I know that that's a big thing typically for Batman as well. He's not out to kill everybody, right? He's not judge, jury, and executioner. He's just trying to shut down bad behavior. And Rami also says halal denotes anything that is accepted by religion. Okay, so that's cool. Thank you for that clarification. And I think that's good because in the beginning, in episode 1 and 2, they said the word haram a lot, which is what? Forbidden, right? It's basically forbidden, rejected, wrong. And it's funny how in episode 6, I guess that kind of closes a different kind of loop. When Sheikh Abdullah is putting the hats on the boys, if halal means accepted, approved, I guess we've gone from nonsense that's haram to behavior and the good guys being approved, acceptable. Rami says the hats might have had a meaning behind them. Besides what I just said, yeah, I bet you. Again, this is my very first run through, and Rami's a superhero because he's already seen it twice. Wow. But I kept stopping to take notes. So it definitely slowed me down. So I want to look into that more because I agree with you. And if anybody watching this live or on the replay, you can put hashtag live, hashtag replay in the comments. I'm always curious about who sees what when, not just during my live streams, but in my edited videos as well. Well, that makes no sense during my edited videos. But if you have any questions or theories or Easter eggs that I may have missed, again, this is my first viewing, definitely put it down below. If you have an idea for a video that you want me to make that's Marvel or MCU related, I'm happy to do that. I will give you credit and a shout out on my video. I did that with Mike Just Me Porter just recently. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please make sure that you do. Okay, so the boys run off with their halal hats on initially. They run into an alley, hide behind a dumpster. The DODC cars pass by. And as those cars leave, Kamala appears, and it's cool. You see her parkouring off the inside of like, it's like one building, but it's like in a sea, and she's like parkouring off the sides of the back of the building, I guess. And she's in her new outfit. She is wearing the mask that Bruno made her. And she's like, "What are you guys wearing? Look at the hats." And they're both in unison going, "What are you wearing?" And they throw their hats away. And Kamala goes up to Bruno first, which I think is very touching because they've been best friends since second grade. And she's like, "I'm so scared," when they hugged each other. And I'm like, "Oh, maybe these two will end up together, right?" Because you could tell he really cares too. But Kamran's like suffering in the background. There's a lot of pain. Then he starts to scream. There's an explosion of his blue tinted Nora powers, and he falls to his knees screaming. And you hear briefly, I don't know if Rami or anybody else heard this, but you hear briefly Najma's voice once again saying his name. He's clutching his left side and he's yelling and he's practically in tears. He's suffering and he says, "I feel like I'm being crushed from the inside out." So it's interesting to note here. I don't know what anybody live around the replay thinks, but the pain, the powers are manifesting in him and he's in pain. This was never what happened with Kamala. I do think they're all Jinn. Nobody pulled back the curtain at the end of the episode and said, "Aha, you're not Jinn, you're really Inhumans." Inhumans were not mentioned. Terrigenesis was not mentioned. And in fact, mutants were mentioned. Mutants are officially canon for Earth 616. So that's exciting. Definitely heard Najma's voice. I did too. And it's the same thing that she said before, but I'm wondering why they echoed it back here again. Did they feel like they needed to like make sure the audience knew where his powers came from? I know that in Kamala's case, nobody sent any powers to her specifically. And again, towards the end of the episode, Bruno reconfirms for the audience as like kind of like our stand-in or our guide. He says the bangle unlocks or amplifies your power. It's not the source of your power. And I will say no more until I get to the end. Yeah, her powers didn't manifest with any pain, physical pain. Kamran's acting like he's being torn from the inside out. Something's wrong, something's different. I don't know if it's because when Najma cast the powers towards him as her final act to protect him while she's saving the world, if because it was kind of force-fed to him, that has to do with his pain. Or do we find out as the MCU continues their story beyond this season? Who knows if it'll be renewed for a second season? I think one or more of the directors said we have to see how the public accepts it. We're open to, of course, doing more work on this, but it depends on how well received the series is. I'm kind of pissed, and I've said this at least 2 different live streams before. Usually Mike Not Me Porter is here, and we'll talk about it back and forth and be like, listen, they should not have released Obi-Wan at the same time as they released a lot of Miss Marvel. They have a whole year of 2022. They could have just staggered this stuff out so that there was little to no crossover. I don't think they did Miss Marvel justice, but you guys tell me what you think in the comments below, live or on the replay. Hashtag live, hashtag replay. I want to see my replay people and thank them for watching. So Rami says, if your theory was right from last time when you said Najma might not have died, she only lost her physical form, this could be Najma's plan to open a rift. It could be. It could definitely be. Their physical forms might have decayed and dropped because they just took this on because they got banished to Earth. They don't want any extra trouble if they can avoid it. So they probably took on earthbound looking forms. If you look in the Marvel comics, Jinn are depicted in a whole bunch of different ways. Not just having to do with the Clandestines, like little offshoot thing that they did in the 80s or the 90s, probably the 90s. But they were always shown kind of as humanoid creatures, but not completely human looking creatures. So my theory was if they were banished to Earth from the Nord dimension, they probably did alter their shape so that they could fit in better and, at least survive while they were figuring things out. So Najma might create a rift so that Kamran can join with them. I'm not ruling that out. I'm not ruling out the fact that they might have still lived on, at least she and the other lady, when they touched the veil and went in. She at least closed the veil, even if my theory is right, and it may be, she at least closed the veil so that her son could survive on the other side of things, until maybe she can open up a rift for them to come back and forth between dimensions. I don't even think that Aisha is physically dead either, but that's a whole nother, well, she's physically dead, but I think her spirit lived on, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. Rami says she planted a seed of some sort. She's using Kamran as a conduit. I agree, because again, the way his powers are manifesting, it's very painful. It seems very involuntary, and he's like really in pain. Ooh, Habla Espanol, Anwar de Leon. I don't, but what I do is I try to translate these into Spanish. So at least the pre-edited videos, folks can enjoy the videos with the subtitles. So I don't. I wish I could. I wish I were multilingual, bilingual, quadlingual. That'd be cool. I know a lot of folks in the world are quadlingual, and we Americans seem very lazy in comparison. And that might not be completely unfair. Okay, so Kamala tells the boys to run off. She makes a phone call to Kareem the Red Dagger, who's already like, you're in trouble this soon? Like, I told you to call me, but I didn't expect to hear back from you so quickly. And it's interesting because all three of Kamala's potential love interests are caught in like a tight little triangle or quadrangle with her. Because the boys are running off, Kamran and Bruno. She almost kissed Bruno, it seemed, on the roof. What was it, episode 1? And then she and Kamran, of course, sparks are flying and all that. And then sparks were flying with her and Red Dagger. So I'm like, wow, all at once. So compressed, but it's cool. And one of my best performing videos is at almost 2,000 views on this channel. And I only just started this channel maybe like 6 weeks ago. But that was talking about all of Kamala's love interests. And it's interesting how they don't squash any single one of them permanently. But that, again, is good storytelling, because she's definitely going to continue on in a major way in the MCU. And it's not just going to be the Marvels. And one of the big Easter eggs at the end confirms what I've said a whole bunch of times previously, but I will get there. So she's like, she explains the situation to Kareem, who is not happy, right? Because he's like, we fight the clandestines. But she's like, I've got to get him out of town somehow. And she knows from a line that Kareem told her in episode 5, the Red Daggers have been in and out of America. And think about it. Now it kind of makes sense. If it didn't make sense to you by episode 5, it should make sense to you now that there were red like sashes or cloths that would be found at certain scenes at least twice over. One of them was at Amir and Taisha's wedding out in the street. There was a red sash. So there were Red Daggers tracking the presence of Noor or light long before Kamala was aware of it, long before we got officially introduced to the Red Daggers. So Kareem's like, get him to the harbor by midnight. I know someone who can help him. You're like, is it Captain Marvel? Because you knew she was going to appear, right? So the kids break into the high school. Nakia is already there. They're all running off, and Kamala and Nakia make up. Bruno sees that DODC is there. Kamran tells everyone to leave so they don't get hurt. And you see like this vicious look in his eyes, and you're like, he's going to start attacking everybody. Here's where the heel turn happens. This is when Kamran loses it and starts melting everyone down, because typically in Marvel, and at least in certain ages of storytelling with DC, it would typically be going on there too. The superheroes, the good guys, don't go killing anybody. If anyone ever died in those kind of phases or ages, it would be by accident. And then the superheroes would be all torn up because they're the good guys. They don't play judge, jury, and executioner, but bad guys do. So, Kamran's like, everybody get out of here. I'll just kill them all. And they're like, no. Please don't do that. Kamala tells Nakia to leave so that she doesn't get associated with everybody else and gets in trouble. But Nakia is like, nope, they've already raided our mosque twice. They don't care. They've raided it twice because of this. They don't believe that we're not involved, so I don't care. The weird thing is how Zoe comes rampaging in out of nowhere, and she's like, I'm part of the team too. So Rami or anybody else, again, this is my first walkthrough, my first viewing of it, and I'm sharing everything fresh with you guys. I'll go back and do edited videos like I've been doing all along. So make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I did link both on the live stream and with the replay. It'll be the first pinned comment, the playlist for all things Miss Marvel that I've done to date. And that does include the lives in there as well as the edited videos. Rami says, also a point in common with Peter Parker and his friends. Very true. Peter he tries to be the traditional wholesome good guy. Even Miles Morales, the Miles Morales version versus Peter Parker. That's typically the hallmark of a good guy. Not to go totally DC on you, but Black Adam is interesting because he's an anti-hero. So he does try to do the right thing, but he doesn't care who he destroys along the way. So that's often the hallmark of a typical anti-hero. They'll do things that the typical hero doesn't want to do or wouldn't normally choose to do. So Zoe comes in out of nowhere and says, I owe you one because you saved my life. She kind of said very quickly something about TikToks, and she somehow figured it out. But and later Nakia is like, well, then why didn't you say that you knew? Why didn't you say anything to anyone? And she's like, that's Kamala's thing to out. It's not mine. So I thought that was very tasteful. I did do a video about Zoe in the comic book saga being a bully to Kamala, and how Zoe's arc, you would think that it completed and she became a friend, but then not. She ends up being a betrayer. So I don't know how they're going to have her continue to play out in the MCU overall. But whatever, she's here now. She's being a friend. So Kamala draws out her game plan on the chalkboard, just like she did in episode 1. You saw all drawings coming to life, animation coming to life. It's the same directors rather from the first 2 episodes doing the last episode. Excuse me, quick drink. Sorry, I don't want to drink on you guys, but I've already been going for like 42 minutes. All right, so she draws out this plan. It starts to come to life. We see everything being forecasted. Again, very episode 1 and 2. The original director's fingerprints are all over this last episode. Agent Deaver shows up on the scene. Agent Cleary isn't there. Now, you guys tell me in the comments, both live and on the replay, your take on how Agent Cleary has seemed to do an about face. I'm going to tell you my theory that somewhere along the line from the original episode where he showed up, where he seemed more in line and more aligned with Agent Deaver, I'm thinking he's a Skrull. Because it doesn't make sense how he suddenly turned into a goody two-shoes and don't bother the kids at the high school, and he's trying to call back the team at least once or twice as things continue to play out in the finale, and he's like scolding her. And I'm like, what would he have cared? He was a total slimeball with Peter Parker and his friends when he was interrogating them in Spider-Man No Way Home. He didn't seem to be too different in that first quick post-credit scene where he's like, oh, I've not seen powers like this before. Bring him in. He told her to bring him in. She's doing what he told her to do. And now he's like, oh, no, I take it back. I take it back. I told you before, Miss Marvel and crew are going to play into way more than just the Marvels. Because even in his interviews, Kevin Feige kind of vaguely said she becomes very important to the MCU. She shows up a lot. She becomes more of a major character. So I'm thinking like Secret Invasion and Secret Wars and stuff like that with the Skrulls and everything. I'm thinking that Cleary is a Skrull. I was like, Talos, is that you? Rami says either a Skrull or his involvement in another incident, possibly from another series, shifted his perspective. Either one of those can be right. The storytelling is very delicate. It opens that loop. We don't like, as human beings, open loops. Normally, you have the whole Chekhov's gun principle, where if you show a gun in a screenplay, someone better use it before the end of the screenplay or the movie or the Broadway show or whatever. Do you recall like Cleary showing up in another series yet? I mean, who knows? There could be off-camera stuff that they revisit later in another series or a movie. I'm not saying you're wrong. You could be completely right. I'm wondering, I can't remember. Agent Cleary's popped up a couple of times. Spider-Man No Way Home was the last one before this one. And it's interesting how that movie was called Spider-Man No Way Home, and the name of the finale is No Normal. Yes, that plays in more specifically with Kamala talking to Kamran before the end of the episode, but I'm like, No Way Home, things are blocked off, they're never going to be the same. And it's the same thing for Kamala now in this episode, and for Kamran also. So either one of those series could be right, and they're kind of like being very delicate with how they're playing Agent Cleary. But I'm telling you, I guess pun intended, my spidey sense went off, and I was like, he's acting very differently now. It was like, go get him. Wait, maybe not. That's so weird. Amir comes in out of nowhere saying he'll help too, and Kamala's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I went to school here too. Plus, I saw the open window because Mom went to send me to go look after you. And if you're like, how would he know that the kids were at the school? Remember in episode 5, Muniba was introduced to the wonders of Find My Phone. So she knows where her daughter is and just sent him to go find them. So that's like nuanced. If you're paying attention to the details, you're like, oh, that's credible. Yes, Rami, I agree. If Cleary appears in She-Hulk, then those two series could be happening at the same time. That's true. That's true. That is true. I can't wait. I'm a lawyer, so I'm going to be doing a lot of breakdowns and stuff like prepping up for She-Hulk. I already have, 2 videos and a separate playlist for She-Hulk. So again, make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'm not just going to do lawyer react stuff, but I'm going to get into how her casework evolved in the comics. She was more in a New York firm as opposed to a California firm, but who cares? In the MCU or Disney Plus, it appears she's going to be over in California. But I can walk you through all the different types of legal cases that she took on, which are really cool, and how she went into space law for the Living Tribunal, which we've already had him introduced now in the MCU several times. I believe the first Easter egg was in the first season of Loki. So that's really cool. They're just starting to now get everything to interlace together. I love it. I love it. They have never done this in cinematic history before. This is so great. So Kamala's weird, superheroes don't need chaperones. But here's the thing. 2 things. Number 1, their faith and their background doesn't suddenly just disappear because Kamala's a super. The mother's still she's a young teenager. She's out. She could be in trouble. Somehow magically Big Brother being a chaperone will help. Mom didn't totally rearrange her DNA and become a different person. And they still have their faith and their customs. But also, this is a direct call back to the comic book saga for Miss Marvel, where Amir was Kamala's chaperone in terms of a bunch of different things, including when she was, off trying to hang out with Kamran initially in the comic book saga. So, if you're the comic book lover, you're there were several touches throughout this episode that keeps, going back to the comics as a touchstone. So I think that's really great storytelling. By the way, live or on the replay, please make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. It helps the live go out to more people while I'm live, and it also helps it go out to more people, especially my current subscribers on the replay. Okay, so they gather up a bunch of supplies, and basically, long story short, they're going to provide a whole bunch of distractions as the Department of Damage Control comes into the school. They're not trying to hurt them. They're just trying to distract them. And Kamala says, we're going to distract DODC with all this stuff, but the real plan is Zoe. And I like this. It's so current to the times. Because Zoe, yeah, she's helping them out with the distractions, but initially she's doing a live stream from inside the school because remember, she had like 400,000 followers on TikTok to begin with. And then at some point they mentioned, I think by episode 2, that her follower count doubled. So if she's not a million followers yet on TikTok, she's getting there. She has her loyal followers that she refers to as she's doing this live stream, and she's telling them all to show up at the school because the kids are in trouble, and come and show your support, right? So that's going to create a lot of chaos, and it also could make for a bad press moment, which Agent Cleary, when he calls Agent Deaver, is like, this is going to be bad press, get them all out of there. She doesn't listen. So Agent Cleary is totally annoyed because everybody knows that they are because Agent Cleary is specifically telling her to get out of there. You're doing this at a high school. It's a bunch of kids. This is bad press. Deaver tries to entice Cleary by saying that there's 2 enhanced individuals in there. She's picked up on Nightlight or Kamala being in there along with Kamran. You would think that at this point, Cleary's like, you know what, fine, get in there and get him. Nope. He's like, stop, evacuate. And he's speaking a little oddly. Okay, if you saw him in Spider-Man No Way Home, if you saw him previous in this series, the speech cadence is off. And I'm really suspecting he's a Skrull or something. I really am. Rami says, missing white woman syndrome. Oh, please, you don't know, man. You don't know. So, let's see. Yeah, so this is the point where Naki is saying to Zoe as they're collecting softballs together, because they're going to basically throw them at DODC. You knew and you didn't say anything, but I like how, how Zoe says, Kamala saved my life at AvengerCon, and I think Kamala should tell the world when she's ready. So that's very tasteful. This is a bit of a departure from the initial character arc that Zoe had in the comics, but that's fine. There is a callback to the comics with her and Nakia later, which I like, because it just opens the door to seeing how that plays out between those 2 individuals later. So Bruno and Kamala are together in the high school chemistry lab. They're mixing up stuff for a different distraction for DODC, but interestingly, there's some dark, dangerous music that starts to play. This puts the audience on edge. Is this where the heel turn for Kamran happens? So Kamala tells Bruno that none of Kamran's family made it out alive from Pakistan. As far as she knows, they're dead. I still think it's just the physical forms and they're off in the Nor, but that's just me. In the background, Amir is coming up to Kamran, and the dangerous music gets a little bit louder. And he's like, "You're not cousin Kamran, huh? What were you doing with my sister?" And Cameron's hurt, but he's just like, "I'm innocent." And Amir's like, "Do you even like British Bake Off?" Because remember, was it episode 2 where, the 2 kids are eating at the diner and Amir and Taisha are there. And Amir's like, "Who is this?" And Kamala's like, "Oh, I shouldn't be hanging out with, a boy socially like this." So she makes like he's a cousin who's come in for the whole wedding that Amir and Taisha were going to have. And, what's this British accent that you have? And Cameron plays it off that he's been binge watching British Bake Off, and he's kind of like absorbed the accent. But they're trying to be funny and make it funny, but at the same time, it's kind of like this emotional dissonance. You hear the music, things are getting dangerous, on 2 different levels, having to do with Kamran. So you're like, this is where the heel turn happens then, right? So then Kamala, the camera goes back to Kamala and Bruno, and Kamala's like, "Please, Bruno tells Kamala, promise me whatever you do, that you do not tell Kamran that his whole family, including his mother, has died. Not until we are all out of here." So you sit there and you go, the heel turns on tap, and this is a Chekhov's gun, right? They open the loop, don't do it. She's going to have to do it, right? So very, very weird. They're blowing up the doors. DODC comes in. Amir says to Kamran, I'm only helping you out because my sister is one of the smartest people that I know, and the doors blow open. So even Amir's not digging on Kamran anymore. So the agents come in. There's a whole bunch of distractions. All the kids put on the hoodies, and Amir does too, to kind of like, blur the lines about where Kamran is, which is smart. Zoe's telling everybody during her live stream to tag everybody. All my loyal followers help us out. And it's funny because her loyal followers include the food truck guy, the gyro guy, or the hero guy, who we met in episode 2 at the carnival, at the Mosque Carnival. And hysterically, Yusuf's like, oh my gosh, because he's one of her followers too. Too funny. Agent Deaver's trying to reach her personnel, but they're on the hunt. And everyone's wearing a hoodie. All the stuff happens in the chemistry lab. They have this huge floofy, like ginormous thing of slime that explodes, and it takes out like all these DODC agents. I thought that was hilarious. I also think it's funny that Kamala and Kamran hide out in a desk in what appears to me Mr. Wilson's office, the guidance counselor from episode 1. So they're hiding under the desk. And, Kamran's in just so much pain. Kamala's trying to reassure him that he's going to be okay, and she holds hands with him. And DODC starts closing in. When their hands are together, you see their powers go. So she's got her purplish Nora powers with her fingers and the bluish Nora powers with his fingers. Now, again, I don't know if they are color coding the powers to be slightly different so that you can tell who's casting what where. That does become important in this episode. But he's not an Inhuman because of what Bruno said at the end. He's not. He is Jinn. They did not pull the rug out from under everybody and go, surprise, you're not Jinn after all. Nope. So their hands are locked together, and she's like, still with me? And he's like, always was. And then they go in to kiss. But of course, here comes Bruno. And he's looking hurt. He offers to keep the agents busy who are closing in so that Kamran and Kamala can get out. On the way out the door, Kamran thanks Bruno. He uses his name, not Brian's name. And he's coming across still as a sympathetic character, but this is very detailed storytelling because from the music and from the other cues that Kamran's going to lose it. But he's still not all a bad guy. He's complicated. So they run off. Let's see. I love how Amir at one point, they're like shooting all the softballs at the DODC that are coming at him one way. And Amir's like, it's working. And meanwhile, they get taken down from behind. I love how they lace the humor into the action, especially with this episode. So Kamala tells Kamran that she's got a contact that will help him at the docks or at the harbor. So that's where they're heading. Makes sense to tell him. But Kamran's worried. He kind of figures out that her contact is a Red Dagger. So he tells her he doesn't trust the situation. And you can kind of understand Kamran. You can sympathize with his concern. He says the Red Daggers have been fighting my family for decades. So he keeps insisting, I really need the Clandestines. I need my mother. Hi, honey, I love you. My husband's going off to work. So Kamala doesn't say anything, and he's like, wait, what? So they get to another set of windows. Kamran pulls back the blinds to look out. Then he's in pain, and he's clutching his side. And then he sounds very dark and very dangerous when he's like, what happened to my mother? So he doesn't really get a chance to answer because since he pulled back the blinds, DODC's like, oh, there's someone there. So they shoot out the windows. He goes to use his powers just instinctively. He sees that he can blow through the brick wall like it's nothing. And Kamala sees it too, which is one thing. But then Kamran does what all heels do. He then goes to vaporize the DODC agents that are pouring in to get them. If I did that to a brick wall, I can easily defeat all these people. That's the bad guy. That's the anti-hero or heel turn. But Kamala is your typical good guy, like Rami and I discussed earlier. She's more like Spider-Man, whether it's the Peter Parker version or the Miles Morales version. They're not out to kill people. That's not what good guys tend to do. So she's like, nope. And she casts a shield to protect the Department of DOC while Cameron's running his Nora powers. So, of course, they backfeed on each other. The powers explode and the kids go running off a different hallway. But you can see how Kamala has knee jerk made her choice. And Kamran, at least initially, makes the decision about how he's going to handle things. And he's still demanding to know what's happened as they continue to run off. So Kamala tries very carefully to tell him what Najma did. And it's hard. You're on the run. She's thinking on the fly. So she says she did exactly what she swore she would do. She pierced the veil. She tried to destroy everything. So Cameron turns on her because, like with most people, my mother may be many things, but I don't talk bad about my mother. I can talk bad about my mother, rather. You don't get to. Hey, Mike, what's going on? You changed your name too, I see. You're not Mike, not me Porter anymore. It's Mike Stan Shill Porter. What's going on? Morning, just woke up, saw the finale at 3 a.m. Yeah, your time. It was awesome. I know it. And I said spoilers galore. How excited are you, Mike, Rami, Anwar, everybody? How excited are you that mutants are officially canon for Earth 616? I love it. I'm so excited. So Cameron turns on Kamala and she's like, she was trying to save our world, like my home. And he goes, my mother's dead, isn't she? Kamala apologizes and he starts to cry. You could tell when Najma was like to the Clandestines an episode or two ago, leave him, he's made his choice. It was not an easy decision for her to cast him out. Of course, he took it hard. So that tells me that up until now, they always had a good relationship. DODC is on him again. They duck into a classroom, but then Cameron goes out into the hallway. At first, I'm like, maybe this isn't a complete heel turn for him. He's using his powers to take down the lockers on both sides to drop on the guys to take him out, which would be one thing. Now it's not a heel turn. Maybe he's reining it in. Except no, then he tries to vaporize them after that. Rami says it was a jaw-dropping moment for me. Me too. Like I said earlier, I don't know if you were there then, Rami. I said, if you read the interviews with Feige and like Variety and all that, he made a big deal that they had to change Kamala's backstory. They had to alter her powers. And I was just thinking, and a lot of Marvel theorists were thinking, okay, so she's not going to be an Inhuman. The Inhumans didn't go over well with the series. And it may or may not be like they're complicated characters when it comes to storytelling, especially Black Bolt. Oh my God, what is it? Comics Explained. Rob is hilarious when he's like, we need to talk about Black Bolt. If you haven't seen that video of his, I'll actually have to link it. I've laughed so hard that I've cried because he can't stand Black Bolt. But Black Bolt's very hard when it comes to storytelling because he can't really speak or he'll vaporize everything, right? So the Inhumans are kind of tricky. They weren't well received. Everybody's been begging for mutants. So it kind of makes sense that they would alter her backstory, not just to make her Jinn. This is a multifaceted thing. It's not that she's just Jinn, because that they didn't take away or alter the Jinn part itself. And the bangle does help her powers. Oh, and I was right about them being nega bands. I knew it. You had some Marvel theorists who were like, no, they're not really nega bands. I don't really think that they're nega bands. No offense. They were because of what happened in the post-credit scene. There's no other way that they weren't. And I'll get there. And I'm going to do a whole separate episode. And I'm going to be like, I was right. Because I think New Rockstars was thinking that the Bengals weren't, nega bands. I love Ryan Airy from Screen Crush. I think he's gone back and forth on what they could be. But the whole time, I was like, they're nega bands. I know it. I know that they are, and they are. I love it. I'm not right all the time either. So, look. And Mike, if you're still here, I took your comment the other day to heart. I did do that video about who's Valkyrie's love interest, and I kind of like trolled on, the MCU. But you know, you're right. You're like, all these people did reviews of Thor Love and Thunder. I loved the movie otherwise. I really did. But you know, you were like, everybody's out there complaining. You know, I wish people would focus more on the good stuff. You know what, Mike? Point well taken. I think I'm not going to be trolling like that anymore. So it's easy to kind of go for that kind of head fake. But at the end of the day, we should be appreciating the content, which I generally tend to do. We should appreciate the content. It's very difficult what they're doing in terms of this multifaceted, like lattice work type of storytelling. You've got the source material from the comics, you've got the MCU, and now you have the additional layer of Disney Plus. So they're doing a lot, and they really are doing it very, very well. And I think thus far, everybody that they've chosen for any character, big or small, I can't imagine who would have been better. Like, they've really done a stellar job. So I will be a good girl. But I had to troll them about Valkyrie because Taika Waititi was like, this is going to be like super gay, this whole movie. And it was not really super gay. I'm straight, okay? I'm happily hetero, but I have friends and family who are all sorts of, you know, identifications and persuasions. And they were all like, I was like, fine, I'll do a video. I'll avenge you. Mike says, that's wild that the theme music was X-Men animated. I know. It was perfect. You were waiting at some point. They had to introduce them and make them canon, yes, to 616 and not just, what was it, 825 or whatever the other, version was in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. So it was cool to see them all as part of the Illuminati, but it's really cool how they outed it here. And then Kamala's reaction was priceless because it's like typical teenager, what she was really worried about. But they held it off and you had the music and there was this big long pause. And then she's just like, give me the keys. I want to drive the car. But we'll get there. So Kamran does take the lockers and pushes them down. And I'm like, okay, maybe he's learned his lesson. He's not going to do a heel turn. Nah, he does a heel turn because now he's going to kill him. And then Kamala sends an embiggened light projection hand to stop him. He breaks free and shoots back at her. She falls back and he runs off, and then she chases after him. Now, Zoe's part of the plan is working. Everybody's out there. All her fans are like screaming and freaking and giving the police a hard time, but the police really aren't part of the problem. It's the DODC. And of course, Kamala's parents are there. Taisha's there. Agent Deaver's there. So Kamran goes blowing open one of the school doors. He's pissed. He's doing his heel turn. Agent Deaver gets on the bullhorn and commands him to go to his knees. And he's like, nope. So he charges up both hands. His eyes fire up blue. Not purple like Aisha's, not purple like Kamala's, but blue. And he's glaring at Deaver. And then he goes to create a shield because they're all firing bullets on him. And then Kamala comes out and casts a bigger shield to protect him. Remember, she's been using her powers longer than him. So the crowd's freaking out because they're firing on two teenagers. And to Kamran's credit, he didn't come out firing. He just blew open the door and just came out and looked at them. So, but, the crowd's not going anywhere. Agent Deaver tells her people to get out. She has a huge cannon that she's going to fire at the kids. Kamala's shield holds up, but you can tell she's worried. And then it explodes the shield and both kids go to the ground. Kamala, the look on her face when she gets up, it's really good acting. She's looking sad. She's looking beaten. Kamran's out cold, apparently. She crawls over to Kamran. Her right arm is powering up with the hard light like we're used to seeing. But the directors from episodes 1, 2, and now 6, same set of directors, they did say, and I know New Rockstar is really excited about this, that what you saw with Kamala initially was not her final form. They kind of do a good merge between the Nora powers and her ability to physically embiggen her body to match the Nor. So it wasn't like an Inhuman Terrigenesis that she shattered her outer form, and now she can just embiggen herself. And actually, the original creator of the Miss Marvel comic, G. Willow Wilson, had said in interviews, I don't know how they're going to do it in the MCU. I think it's going to look weird. Like, I think it would translate out differently from comics to the big screen. So this was their kind of like hedge, where she's still covered in the noir powers, but her body does stretch to go with it. Mike says, well, there's some of my YouTube friends that gave Thor Love and Thunder a hard time. I took it way too personal. I got over it. I had friends that had to remind me of who I am. That's why the name changed. Aww, I like that. But Mike, I really did take that seriously. You're right. People are too quick to crap on stuff. And I otherwise loved the movie. So I like listened to some friends and family, and I went to go avenge them with the first video. But I really probably should have at least done a live to establish content on my channel to say, I otherwise love this movie. I'm going to come out with a pre-edited video. Barney's working on it now. And just, you know, with like the one thing. But otherwise, I thought the movie was awesome. But it's too easy for everybody to be like, somebody did a video, I don't want to say who it was, Thor Love and Blunder, which was a funny title, but like, this stuff's hard to pull off, MCU or not. So I think, you know, we should show patience to the creators. And we should really focus, we should accentuate the positive and not the negative so much. So you've changed me, Mike. I'm glad that you said something. I love when my subscribers, my community members, not only suggest videos for me, but like give me their feedback, because this isn't about me, glorious me. This is about me sharing with you guys and all of us geeking out collectively. So I'm not going to go poisoning the well water with trollish stuff anymore. I'm going to be a good girl. But I do have to crow that I was right about the darn nega bands, because I was like, I know they're nega bands. And that post-credit scene was really, I was like, yes, it's exactly what I thought it was. So, okay. And I know why they made them nega bands, and I think it fits completely with my theory about what Kamala is going to have to do. Yes, with Carol. Yes, with Monica Rambeau, to deal with Kang, because he's too much of a big bad for those nega bands not to factor in. Mike says, everyone should feel the way they feel. Some even hate all of phase 4. I get it, but I love phase 4. I do too. I think every phase, some people are like, they should do away with phases. I don't think so. Not just because it's tradition and we're used to it and it's like a rhythm and a cadence that Marvel fans love. I think it's important because every phase had its own point or purpose to it as well. I mean, phase 1 obviously introduced us to the basic form of the Avengers and kind of set up it did a lot. It did do a fair amount of table setting on the fly, but every phase thereafter, I think, had their own accent mark or purpose. Phase 4 isn't just unlocking a whole bunch of cosmic stuff. Like, I love the Eternals. Okay, it was a long movie, and there's a lot to do, and I certainly hope that they come out with Eternals too, because I think the whole point of the Celestials and the whole cosmic space opera that goes with that, and they can bring Icarus back and stuff. Spoilers on everything, guys, okay? I just, people have to be patient. This is a huge, huge story. Non-comic book fans, I think, are the ones that are just, having the worst reaction, because they're not used to storytelling of this scope and magnitude. And now you've got multi-facets that are being introduced in phase 4, but not just the cosmic stuff. There's a lot of new blood that's coming in. There's a lot of table setting for them. And now we know that phase 4 is also important, because this is where mutants become canon to the world that we're used to being in. So this is just too important. I think every phase should be a shade different than the one before it. Rami says, well said, both of you, because I was crapping on L&D as well. And then I realized I was being too critical. Listen, folks, we're in a time in, the world globally where everybody's freaking out. This is not like the Renaissance period of the globe, unfortunately. But I think that it's important for communities to come together on YouTube and other platforms and do their best to build things up and to support one another and the works of other creators. You know, directors of major motion pictures are creators. We just never called them that before. But the creator economy has been around now for at least a decade. Being a creator has been a thing. And I think it's leveled the playing field with tech and social media and platforms like YouTube. So we can all become our own creators. And we do have the ability to transcend even, you know, legacy brands. We can transcend legacy media. And I'm not getting political. I don't get political, but I'm just saying, no matter what echo chamber of legacy media one could listen to, we all have the ability to transcend all of them. Look at Mr. Beast, for goodness sakes. So we all have our part to play as creators. And I think that someone like Mike is right. We need to do it responsibly. And someone like Rami, it's important that he and I and other creators like us do a positive ripple effect on this platform and others. It's here. I'm being completely serious. Mike says, I will listen. I have to run to get the wife and I'll get some breakfast, but I will be listening. Well, thank you. My husband had to run off to work, but I think he's still listening to me too. So, okay. Kamala crawls over to Kamran. Her right arm is powering up with the hard light around it like we're used to. She says the word embiggen. So she's embiggened before with the Noor hard light projections. But the fact that she says embiggen is already your nod to this is going to be different. She gets up to both feet. You don't see her upper body. You just see her feet, her ankles, and like her calves, up to her calves, that are all covered with the Noor. And you're like, okay, she's completely encased in Noor, which she was. You don't get to see all of her yet. The full reveal is held off for a minute. She casts the hard light projection discs. She runs off. You still can't really see her fully yet. But you do see Bruno and Amir's faces, and they look like shocked. And then you see the big reveal. Kamala is in an embiggen state. She's stretched out her body to match, you know, the comics. But she's still encased with the Noor light projections. I think that this is important. Yes, Rami, that was an important moment. It really was. It was an awesome moment. It was an important moment. The directors from episodes 1 and 2, which are the same directors for episode 6, did say that you will see her final form before the end. And this is her final form. She has the ability to morph and embiggen her limbs, but she still has the Noor around her. So she's not casting anything off like she's an Inhuman and this is Terrigenesis. I think that's an important reason why they left her encased with the Noor. And also, like I said, they did not pull the rug out from under her and say, ha, you're really not a Jinn after all. That was just the Clandestines, you know, talking up smack. Nope, it's all of it. Well, almost all of it. She's not an Inhuman. They may do Inhumans later, but they're not doing it here. They're doing mutants, and I'd rather have that. So I love how she says they carry the joke along that she hates the name Nightlight. She talks to some people in a car that got flipped in the chaos. Are you guys okay? And they're like, oh, it's Nightlight. And she's like, no, not that name, please. So Kamran's off fighting the Department of Damage Control agents. The kids are watching. Everyone's kind of freaked. Agent Deaver comes up to him with a gun and shoots him at close range. But Kamran powers up and sends a car her way. Now, she jumps out of the way. The car goes flying out to the crowd. This is an important moment to Kamran's character arc. They moved him very swiftly through a tight arc in this episode, but I think that it was very well done. Rami says her power is basically making the Noor an extension of her physical self. I know. I love it. It was so artfully and tastefully done. So now this is the best merge that you're going to get between the comics and the MCU. I love how they love this character and they're doing their best to do right by her. And to do right by the comic book fans too. Again, you guys probably know this both live and on the replay, but Kevin Feige is a huge comic book nerd. He loves it. They could not have picked a better person for this to oversee all of the MCU. They just couldn't pick a better person. And a lot of the folks that were involved in phase one very heavily, they either were comic book artists themselves or have worked in the industry. So if you're like, wow, they really did set down a very firm foundation, it wasn't dumb luck. He was very strategic about it. So the fact that Kamran throws the car at Agent Deaver, yes, he's done his heel turn. He doesn't care if he hurts her or kills her, right? But then he notices that she got out of the way and the car could have hit the crowd. That wasn't his intention. He's not all the way gone as a heel, which is important because this is not a two-dimensional, like old-timey storytelling thing where you have black and white. There's myriad shades of gray. He didn't want to hurt the crowd. He doesn't want to hurt people who aren't attacking him. He's not like, this whole planet will, suffer because my mother sacrificed herself to the veil. No, that's not what he wants. So you can see that Kamala's embiggen hand catches a car. She puts it down. But you do get a quick shot of the look on Kamran's face where he's relieved that she spared the crowd something he didn't mean to give them. And Kamala puts down the car, and the crowd cheers for her. And I love how she does the double peace sign with the Nor clad and big in hands. That was so perfect. So Agent Deaver comes back at Kamran with the gun. This time he flips out. Now I get it. It's the heat of battle and she just won't stop. So he starts casting his bluish and gold colored projections everywhere. I'm not even sure the way that scene played out with, this is again my first viewing, that he even meant to go this ballistic. It seems like he's not 100% in control of it all, whether it's his powers, his rage, or both. He is hurt. He's still in pain. They are forecasting that to you still. Kamala strides through everything to get to him, and then she casts a big purplish Nor dome to just encase them in like that bubble and spare the crowd any further projections from him. And Kamran, you know what? The lines that they wrote for him here, you could imagine somebody saying this in real life. He's like, look around, Kamala. It's all gone too far. They're never going to accept me. They're never going to accept you. My mother is right. This isn't my home. But Kamala makes a point, but she saved it, meaning this planet or this world, for you. She saved it for you. In her last moments, she used everything she had to protect you. She chose you. So, and she's right, because Najma didn't care what was going to happen to this world. She even said it in episode 3. By episode 5. By episode 5, she's basically like, I can still open the veil. I don't care what happens. Waleed had shown what was going to happen to the world. The clandestines knew it. So Waleed and the Red Daggers weren't just protecting Pakistan, they were protecting the whole world. She knew what she was doing. She knew what it was going to do to the world. She didn't close the veil. Kamala's right. She didn't close the veil to save the world because she suddenly felt bad. She saved the world because Kamran was still in it. Okay, and whatever was going to happen to her going into the veil, she didn't want that to be his fate just in case it went sideways. I'm still telling you that she's not dead. I really don't think that she's dead or the other clandestine member was dead. I think their physical forms dropped away. Okay. So Kamran's very beaten up. He's teary-eyed. He's like, look at everything I've done, Kamala. What am I supposed to do? How can I ever be normal? And that's a fair question, right? But just like the title of this last episode says, Kamala says there is no normal. There's just us and what we do with what we're given. I love that she says that because that's a callback to what Sheikh Abdullah had told her when he was given her advice. I think it was episode 3. They're all starting to blur in together now. Where he said, when you do good, you're doing good with what God has given you. God gives you something, you make the most of it. Good isn't something you are, it's what you do. Or no, I'm sorry. Good isn't just what you do, it's what you are. Darn it. I'm messing that up. But it is a callback to Sheikh Abdullah's advice to her. Now she's carrying it forward to Kamran. What we're given isn't good or bad. It's what we do with it that is good or bad. So we're not good or bad people off the jump. It's the decisions we make and what we do making those decisions with what we have that, makes the difference. Thank you, Rami. Good isn't who you are, it's what you do. And that is a direct call back to what Sheikh Abdullah had said to Kamala, giving her advice. And now she's giving Kamran pretty much the same advice. So, good isn't who you are, it's what you do. There's just us, and what we do with what we're given determines who we are. And you saw already her decision was made. I'm a superhero. I'm going to save people. I'm going to even save people from themselves. Kamran's been very angry and just attacking people as a heel would. But again, I think it was very important to the storytelling, the relief on his face when she caught the car. Because it's not like he just doesn't care about anybody and everybody, and they can all go to Hades. He doesn't care. So she punches a hole in the ground. Kamran says very genuinely to her, thank you. So I don't know if he's going to be a full-blown heel or not. I don't think this is the last we've seen of him, because he goes off and he ends up meeting up with Red Dagger, Kareem Red Dagger himself, towards the end of the episode. And it's Kareem who smuggles him out of the country. So all the Nora disappears, and Kamala's kind of crying. This is all very much. And I think she's also got the realization from what Sheikh Abdullah had said to her and the advice that she carried forward to Kamran. It's kind of hitting her. She can be who she wants to be. The decisions are going to determine whether it was a good decision, whether she's a good person, whether what she does is right. So Agent Deaver goes to command DODC to get Kamala, because at least she's left behind. But all the people in the crowd go run to protect her. They become like a human wall or a human shield. And meanwhile, Yusuf's in the background, like any good parent would be like, are you okay? And then that's amazing. He's all fanboying all over her. And I like how it's very tasteful. The Jersey City police come and they form their own rank and wall in front of the otherwise human barricade, and they face off against DODC. And the crowd, meanwhile, is yelling at DODC, saying, she saved us. She saved all our lives. Like the crowd and the police, otherwise, they all holistically get the picture. She's not a foe. She's a friend. Leave her alone. And the world's used to superheroes since the Battle of Earth and Ant-Man doing his podcast and everything. So they understand quite a bit. So Kamala, meanwhile, she's been bought enough time with all of this going on to run off her light disc projections, through the sky. And then Agent Cleary calls Agent Deaver and basically fires her. He tells her, you relieved of your duties, get everyone out of there. You went against my orders publicly, and then you attacked a bunch of kids using our name. And do you know what that means? It means you've been relieved of your duty, and I have to fix your mess. And she leaves, and everyone cheers. The DODC leaves, and everyone cheers. Again, I'm telling you, Agent Cleary is very, very different now than he was in Spider-Man No Way Home or the beginning of the series. I'm thinking he's been replaced by a Skrull. And you guys tell me what you think, both live and on the replay, but I think he's been replaced by a Skrull. They have to start showing that people have been replaced by some Skrulls, whether they're friend Skrulls, like they did with Agent Nick Fury. Talos and his wife were out there, pretending to be Nick Fury, right? And his sidekick, whose name is going to escape me right now because I'm live. But I love her. Darn it. So you do see friendly Skrulls that are doing impersonations, but with Secret Invasion, Secret Wars, you're going to have that, combative group of Skrulls who are like, nah, we're just going to impersonate everybody and take over, and this planet is ours. So I think Cleary's been taken over by like a Talos kind of Skrull, because he's like, oh, I'll take over from here. Don't worry about it. because if he wanted those kids, they could have just gotten them, or he would have supported them getting them. So that's what I think. You guys tell me what you think. Then you see, I love this, and I have to go back and look again. I wanted to go live before it was too late. I need to freeze the frame and see all the different people that are doing the social media reactions, especially on TikTok. This is very heavily focused on TikTok, which they're saying is definitely becoming the new Facebook. So if you haven't subscribed to the Stacey Storino YouTube channel and you're a content creator or an entrepreneur, Stacey Storino YouTube channel, I have over 1,600 subs there. I've been a content marketing coach for, oh gosh, since like 2013, 14. So this is not my first YouTube channel. But I loved seeing the TikTok reactions. You see everybody reacting. What's super hysterical are three people in particular. Sheikh Abdullah made me laugh. Then you had Mr. Wilson, Gabe Wilson, who was the guidance counselor, and he's like, "We are part of history," which is true. That's a callback to 2014 when the original Miss Marvel comic was released. That was very much the global reaction of the people on that release. That release sold out 5 times. It went through 5 printings. People so freaked out because you had a brown-skinned Muslim girl who is, a superhero. You really didn't see too much of that going on back then. So that was huge, and that was a collective reaction. We are part of history. So I love Mr. Wilson's. I gotta figure out the full meaning of his handle, but it's GWW, which is G. Willow Wilson is the original creator. So Gabe Wilson was kind of like an Easter egg for her, but GWW, not the bridge. Oh my gosh, the George Washington Bridge. Oh my god. I just figured it out now. If you're from the tri-state area like I am, you appreciate that. Holy crap, that's funny. GWW, not the bridge. It's Mr. Wilson. And he says, "Move over, New York City. We have a cooler superhero, and she's #flawless." I am definitely doing a video where I am going to go back to the original Easter egg that I did kind of do a breakdown of previously, where Gabe Wilson said, this was episode 1. I want you to look in the mirror, and see the woman that's reflected back at you. And she's like, "You're doing Mulan." And he's like, yes, I am. That song I said was going to be huge, not just because of like the initial meaning behind it, not just because it's a Disney property, Mulan, and Disney bought Marvel. Oh, no. There's every line of that song. I've been watching the series play out, and how they close that big loop towards the end of this episode was beautiful. So I'm going to do a whole separate video that just deals with that song. Yes, that was clever, Rami. I just figured that out. I was like, there's something behind GWW, not the bridge. Okay, so we've gone full circle with Gabe Wilson, Reflections, which was the Christina Aguilera song that was done in the original version of Mulan. I like the movie version too, but the original version to me is really cool. And then Get the Freak Out of Here. How much did you guys die laughing? I must have lost 5 minutes to pausing the stream and taking notes to laugh, because here comes Kamala's mother on friggin' TikTok, Royal Ruby 335. So I don't know if 335 is important because of a comic book reference or whatever. I'll have to look into that more, unless Rami or somebody else knows now while I'm live, or say it in the on the replay in the comments. But I love the fact that they did this for several reasons. Not just because it was hysterically fall down funny to see a Gen Xer on TikTok. I mean, I'm on TikTok. You can go to the Stacey Storino TikTok channel and I'm there. But it's funny for several reasons. Not just because the mom who's supposedly out of touch is actually on TikTok. Ha ha ha. You'll notice that a relative in Pakistan had said that growing up, Muniba was a relative. And then episode 5, the last episode, Sana showed Kamala a whole bunch of photos and a photo album and ticket stubs, and her daughter ran away and she went to concerts and she was very Americanized and she was very much a rebel and like in touch with the pop culture and the times. So that kind of opened a loop unexpectedly that got closed here, where, you know, Muniba's like, haha, I'm really not old and dried up. I'm still a rebel for my age. I know, right, as of summer of 2021, TikTok stopped being predominantly for the kids and the super young adults. I think it was August of 2021, TikTok came out. Now, this is a content marketing coach and me saying this. TikTok came out and said, oh, no, we're more than half adults right now. Definitely people well into their 20s and 30s. There's more of them than there are minors on the platform. And I know that as of spring 2022, the biggest growing demographic on TikTok are women in their 30s, like millennial women especially. Now, Muniba's a Gen Xer like me, but it's funny because number one, she's on TikTok. Number two, she's still a rebel. She still doesn't fit that Gen X mom mold. Like, she can listen to Bon Jovi while she's frigging live streaming, no less, on TikTok. Hilarious. And I love how she sits there and perpetrates as though she doesn't know who Miss Marvel is. I love how she puts IDK, which is kind of dated in a sense, I guess, but whatever. IDK who she is, but Ruby is on the case. Then she puts hashtag FYP, which I don't think other folks that were younger than her were putting when they did hashtags. I know that when TikTok first came out, again, this is why it's funny, I'm a content marketing coach too, doing this. Because I know at one point it was so the predominating like advice to put hashtag FYP and hashtag for you page in your hashtags. Guys, gals, however you identify people, guess what? That doesn't really help you anymore. But of course, a Gen Xer who's kind of like putting a toe in the social media water today, she might not know that, or she might be kind of like a step behind everybody else. So I think that was just like a little golden nugget that was perfect. You can put a whole lot more hashtags on your content than you used to, and you really should be doing it more specific, your hashtags to what people are searching for. Because people do use TikTok as a social media search engine. Rami says, I never read the comics before. You should. They're really good. They're really good. And it just broke a whole bunch of molds back in 2014, which isn't technically forever ago. It's not even 10 years ago. So she is a rebel. She won't completely act her age. She's got a hidden TikTok life from her daughter, which is hilarious. And she's clearly a Gen Xer who doesn't completely understand algorithms. And interestingly enough, her live streams already got 26,000 likes on it, which is just hilarious. Then the real Gyro King, or the real Hero King, from episode 2, where we were introduced to his character, and he had the food truck at the carnival. It's funny. He's reacting to the whole thing, which is funny enough. He's using an augmented reality special effect that seems like a callback to Kamala's powers. And later on, he pops back in and he's making as though Kamala's tried his heroes and that she loves them, which I don't think is true. But whatever, people take creative liberties with this sort of stuff. And of course, we go back to... It seems like the two directors, if you've seen them interviewed, it seems like their characters doing their own reactions too. I have to go back and rewatch it. So I thought that was funny. But even more hysterically, we come back to Royal Ruby 335 again. And she's going on and on about, well, I don't know who this girl is. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. But I think it's going to be really hard for our newest superhero to find a husband. Because that's what she was really concerned about in the first episode. And the second episode, hilarious. Then you see Sheikh Abdullah come back again. He's not just doing a more general reaction, He's used an AR filter to turn into a hot dog. And he goes, let's hope this hot dog is halal. To me, no offense, a hot dog would be anything but halal. So that's even funnier. Hey, what's going on? 3306, what's going on? What was your favorite part of Miss Marvel episode 6? I can't wait to hear from you. Zoe, Miguel, and Nakia are also all reacting. Zoe, now here's the callback to the comic book saga, okay? Zoe pulls in Nakia into her reaction, and Nakia is like, this is your account. This isn't my account. You don't have to have me here. And Zoe's like, oh no, she puts her arm around her. I want to use my platform to amplify your platform. But this is kind of, to me, comic book foreshadowing, because if you've read even just the beginning of the first, flight of comics from the 2014 series, you know that at some point Zoe comes out as a lesbian, and who does she have a huge crush on? But it's actually Nakia, who in the comics anyway does not return her favor, her feelings, but she handles things really well and they stay friends. It was a very, very tasteful way that she handled it. And then you've got Hammy Dizzle, who's the little kid from episode 2 that Kamala saved, but the rescue got botched at the end. So he's praising her with the one hand, saying she's got mad skills, but he's rejecting her in the other hand, going, I have no idea why they weren't there when she dropped me and broke my leg. So, of course, he's reacting because everyone is, but he's getting in on the act saying, hey, don't forget me. I was the victim that she saved, however many weeks ago. So then we see Kamala in her bedroom. This is like the full circle moment from episode 1, where she's looking in the mirror. She's not 100% loving her reflection in the mirror. And then we have Gabe Wilson, her guidance counselor, saying, the mirror thing from Reflections. He's quoting the Reflections song from Mulan and all that. But we see that Kamala's looking at her social media. She's bemused. She sees Sheikh Abdullah throwing a celebration of our own superhero. So she gets up and she looks in the mirror. It's important that we kind of end off with Sheikh Abdullah talking about our superhero and showing that he loves and respects this person. Whether he realizes it's Kamala or not doesn't even matter, because Kamala initially was not only afraid that she was going to get rejected by her family, she was also afraid she was going to be rejected by her best friend. Bruno knew very quickly on, but her other best friend, Nakia. So those things didn't come to pass. And that faith was important to her throughout. So, is this haram or is it halal? Is this something that's acceptable or is this evil and she shouldn't be doing this? Especially the whole mention that Yusuf said to Bruno when Bruno was researching the jinn and everything else. And he was like reading the research that was in Urdu. And he was saying how jinn, are kind of considered to be magical, like they could be bad creatures or good depending upon what they do. And if you research the Quran at all, if Islam is not your faith to begin with, of course, the worship or gross acceptance of magical things is not considered to be acceptable. Oh, it's the same in Catholicism as well. No offense. Other faiths are like magic, paganism, no, that sort of thing. So this isn't like Islam centric. It's not. But Kamala was worried that she was going to be out of step with her faith and her life and her religious leader, Sheikh Abdullah, and her family. And what happens now? She knows that everything's okay. And most of the close people in her life also know that she's this person. So you see her looking in the mirror and she's taking it all in. She's very proud of who she sees. And then she does the typical superhero pose where her legs are akimbo, her shoulders are back. She's looking confidently in the mirror. This is how we should all feel. This is how teenagers who are struggling with self-image should feel. But this is how all of us should feel as we move through life and we continue to evolve. But this is also just closing the whole reflections loop. She does accept the person in the mirror. She does know what her future is going to be. She's not sweating college or not. She knows she is the truest expression of who she's wanted to be in her life. and she loves it. So she goes out on the roof and her dad joins her. And he says to her, what does he call her, Nightlight? And she's like, no. And then he's asking her what she's going to call herself if not Nightlight. And she goes, I'm still figuring that out. And Yusuf, kind of like what I just said before, he's a Gen Xer like me too. He's like, we're all figuring everything out. And that happens throughout our lives. You're not cooked and done just because you hit 21 years old or you finish college or university or trade school or whatever it is that you do, right? So you see a couple of quick images while they're talking. Bruno slides a note into Kamala's locker. Amir is telling his family all about his involvement with the kids in the fight against DODC. He's all proud of himself. He thinks of himself as a hero. Nakia is running through the mosque with the board and Sheikh Abdullah. She's fully embraced her position as a member of the board. But Yusuf tells Kamala, you've saved lives. And here's where he does that one big Quran quote that from the very first trailer, I believe, you heard at least Yusuf say these words to Kamala. He says, if you save one life, you save the world. And that's a tie-in to a very popular Quran quote. Hey, what's going on? Rohith, what's going on? What was your favorite part of Marvel, Miss Marvel episode 6? Do you love the fact that mutants are now officially in? I love it. So you see Kamran and Kareem meet up at the dock, and Kareem like stands up at the table and he physically inclines his head, inviting Kamran to sit down. I guess they talk and he gets him out of there. But then Yusuf says to Kamala, do you know why we called you Kamala? This is important for two reasons. This doesn't just factor into the decision she makes about her name. It ties into the fact that the relative, when they were over in Pakistan, said to Kamala, I don't know if you know this, Maniva was a bit of a rebel. Even the name Kamala, that's not a traditional name. So we do get a bit of a clarification here, where Yusuf says to Kamala, do you know why we called you Kamala? Your mother and I tried for years to have a second child. We almost lost all hope. And then you came. Oh, Bitta, you were just so perfect. That's what Kamala means in Arabic. Perfect. But in Urdu, it's more like wonder, marvel. So Kamala immediately, because she's the biggest fangirl of Carol Danvers ever, and they pay this off again in the post-credit scene, she's like, I have the same name as Carol freaking Danvers? And that's not what he really meant for her to think. He's like, but you have always been, and you still are, our own little Miss Marvel. And you can tell the way her eyes light up. She hugs her father. They have that nice father-daughter, I love you moment. You could tell that that's why she ultimately picks the name Miss Marvel for herself. So that she runs off, casting the hard-like discs, and she's running off. And you can see the purplish noor reflected in his glasses. And he has this look of wonder, Yusuf does. And he whispers, magic, absolute magic. And this is funny because in episode 1, wasn't it? He was talking about Zuzu, which, is the version of Alexa. And it was just funny because he thought that that was magic. But it turns out his daughter is more important magic than Zuzu or Alexa. Mike says, I'm more of a Gen X, but per Wikipedia, I was born a baby boomer. I'm a boomer. I was born in 63. The cutoff was in 64. Oh, dude. You're really fringe Gen X, though. Me, it was 70. You're fringe Gen X. That's so funny. My brother-in-law stands in the gap also. He was born in 60. No, he doesn't stand in the gap. Was he 64 or 65? He's in there. He's in there with you. So I love how they cut to the next classic scene that you must have seen in several trailers, where she's sitting on the lamppost overlooking Jersey City. This is pitch perfect to how she's done it in the comics, right? So that was beautiful. I love when they take the time to, as best as possible, merge the real life cinematic shots with the comic book panels that stand out to us. They did this in Thor: Love and Thunder. when the dead god was lying there on its side. I forget the name of it. He looks like a big old hedgehog with the head of a rat. And Thor's just looking at it after Gore has killed that particular god, because Gore was friends with that god. And it's like down to the angle of the head of the dead animal on the side, or the dead god on his side. And we're looking at Thor from behind, and just his grief, like the way they reproduced that, the way Taika Waititi made sure his crew took the time to reproduce that shot. That's just lovely. Those are like individual, like love letters or postcards to the original comic book fans. Straight from the comics, says Mike. Yes, you are right. You are correct, sir. So the camera does a 180 around her. You've got all the swelling superhero music going. And then she runs off on her hard light projections. One of them turns into the slanted diagonal S from Miss Marvel. But then it breaks apart and it says 1 week later. So everybody's meeting up with Cameron's car. Bruno and Nakia meet up with Kamala in Cameron's car, and he left it to them. Obviously, says Nakia, because he snuck out of the country. So that's confirming to us as the audience that Red Dagger didn't attack him or anything. He took him out of the country as he promised. And then they're joking back and forth. Bruno's like, you told me I could have it. I could take it to Caltech. And they're all just joking around. And Nakia hugs Bruno and says she'll miss him. He goes, I'll only be a 43-hour drive away. And this is when we do the Marvel reveal. Oh, yes, definitely iconic. Rami asks a really good question. As a lawyer, how do you think any of the car thing is legal? It's kind of not. They have to sign over the title. I'm admitted in New York, not Jersey, but I'm going to kind of guess it's the same thing. This is issue spotting, everybody, live and on the replay. This is not legal advice. But, sure, he could physically just dump it and run, and let's pretend he owned the car outright. So there's no lease, there's no car loan or anything. He still should have signed over the title to somebody, because it's still technically legally his car. But it's sort of like, if nobody knows, and who cares, right? Until, God forbid, there's an accident or something, or they can never sell the car because the title isn't in their name. So there you go. Those are two potential complications. Make sure the titles are correct, everybody. If you're going to sell a car, gift a car, because you can gift a car. So this is the part where mutants are officially in the MCU. Okay, this is the part. So Bruno comes over to Kamala, who's also wearing a comic book accurate, like fuzzy, like, hat with the ear flaps and everything. And the plaid looks very much like the plaid from the comics. So that's also kind of like a direct callback to the comics. So Bruno says, before I leave, I have to tell you something to Kamala. He tells her that, sure, her powers manifest in a very similar way to how Cameron's did, right? And sure, the Nora bangle helps unlock or accelerate things for her. But he'd apparently done a bunch of tests on her and a bunch of tests on her family members, and he grew up with them. So I can't imagine that, this didn't feel wrong that he ran tests on the family and stuff. Now that they know that she has powers, I could only imagine he did how much testing in episode 2, right? So he's, a scientist. He wants to know more. So he said, when I compared your test results with that of your family, I found something different. And she's like, okay. And he's like, it's like a mutation. And then you have the pause and kind of like the mutant-esque music in the background. Nobody says anything. She's kind of just looking at him, taking in that information. So we're all like, mutants are in the MCU. Oh my God. Mutants are on Earth 616. Oh my God. We're all excited, right? Typical teenager. The next line that she says is totally pitch perfect. If you ask me, I'm the parent of a teenager. She's like, whatever it is, it's just going to be another label. Keys, please. And she just wants the keys to go drive in Cameron's car. That's all she cares about. Meanwhile, everybody's like, oh, and she doesn't care. She doesn't care about the importance of this. She's not even asking any serious questions. And the immediate thing that, as they get in the car, Nakia is driving the car. She goes, get in because we're all getting shawarma. Now, this is an Easter egg. What they said with Mutants, they're now officially canon in the MCU. That's direct. The more Easter egg part of it is, come on, let's go. We're all getting shawarma to celebrate. This is a callback to the original Avengers team. Now, if you know the comic book saga, you know that for a time, Kamala does join the official Avengers. So that's important because that is forecasting at least where part of her character journey is going to be moving forward in the MCU. To me, it's not just as simple. I mean, at the end of the post-credit scene, they confirmed she's going to go, appear in the Marvels. Great. We all knew that. But she's going to be a more significant part of things. Like Kevin Feige had said in interviews, it's not going to stop at just the Marvels. Or if they decide, because they totally could, there's so much storytelling that they could do just sticking more to Jersey City with Kamala as well. The directors have said if this was very well received, they could maybe do season 2 of Ms. Marvel. So they can do both. But putting aside Disney Plus and even putting aside Ms. Marvel, Kamala factors in heavily to Marvel itself. And she's going to continue to factor in heavily in the MCU. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And you want to check out the videos that are in the playlist for Ms. Marvel. I have discussed several different times, several different ways, and I'm going to reiterate it again and go deeper. Kamala absolutely has to fight Kang. She will be very, very, very pivotal in terms of doing that, and so will her nega bands. And we're going to get to why I know they're nega bands in a minute. I was right. Everybody thought the Bengals could factor in, but I'm telling you, other Marvel theorists were like, we don't think that they really are nega bands after all. We think there's something different. Nope. Turns out I was right. I stuck to it and I told you guys why. But if you haven't seen the nega bands video that I did, that's even good right now as a standalone for breaking down what the nega bands are and why I really do think whether she's got one of them or two of them, Ms. Marvel has the nega bands or a nega band with her. And if it's Kree tech, that's great. That doesn't change the fact that they're nega bands or why it's important that they are nega bands, okay? Hey, mythical friend, what's going on? Let's see. So that's why it's so important that we're doing that Avengers Easter egg. It's not just because it's cool. If you know the comic book saga from 2014 onward, you know that Kamala ends up joining the Avengers for a time. So now we get to that post-credit scene where y'all were like, if we didn't see Captain Marvel yet, we know it has to happen now, which it did. You see Kamala flop down on her bed like a typical teen, but she's in costume, so she went somewhere as a superhero. But of course, real life intrudes. Her mother is totally all over her to get her science homework done. And typical teen, she's like, okay, But then she's lying there looking at her arms, like, whatever. I got to deal with homework. I got to deal with school. Her bangle activates and glows, and she's looking at it. She's still looking at it. She gets up. She's looking at it as she's walking around, and she gets pulled into, at first I was like, another dimension. No, she gets pulled in through her closet. But she actually went through another dimension because when she gets up, she's flipped places with Carol Danvers. And Carol Danvers is like, what? Where am I? What's going on? Her fingertips are still glowing purplish, just a little. It's not thick with Noor like you would see with Kamala. This is important that they did it that way in terms of the animation, because this is not what happened directly in the comics where Kamala, because the whole Inhumans thing, which they're not doing here, she went into her little, Terrigen Mist, little shell there, and then she breaks it off, and she's first morphed into Carol Danvers. She didn't morph into Carol Danvers. So this isn't Carol Danvers as a version of Kamala. That's not what this is. So the purplish stuff disappears, And Carol picks up something from everything having been destroyed, and she sees, it's a poster of Captain Marvel. And she's like, and then she's looking around going, and she sees how much of a fangirl whomever this person's room is that she's in. And she's like, oh no. So not cool. I think Kamala would die if she saw her reaction. She's like, no, 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 no. And then she runs off camera, and that's it. So it's not Kamala having embiggened or changed or shapeshifted her form. That's not what this is. Okay? It's the nega bands. And I'm telling you, it's the nega bands. And she's swapped places with Kamala in a different dimension. So this is what's going to pull Kamala initially into the whole cosmic side of things, right? Because she's really been earthbound at this point. I know the veil and all that stuff, but this is how not only Captain Marvel's going to get involved, the parents, the actors who play the parents and the actor who plays the brother, it's been confirmed that they're going to appear in the Marvels. And even if it's just an initial scene where, Carol's figuring out where she is, what dimension she's in, and that sort of thing, they'll be there at least for that scene. Hopefully more, because I love this family. And so that's kind of it. Those are my reactions. Those are the Easter eggs. So I said that there were two major things that went down here, and that we had an Easter egg that's important, foreshadowing where Kamala's gonna go after the Marvels and all that stuff. Or maybe because of the Marvels, right? Because Captain Marvel can be an Avenger, right? So she's gonna be in the Avengers like the comic book saga, but it's important that mutants came into the MCU. Super, super important. So let me say this also. Department of Damage Control. Here are my thoughts about them being the ultimate big bad. Because, kind of Kamran did a heel turn, but then he realized he doesn't want to be that bad, and he doesn't want to be that destructive. And he goes off and allows a Red Dagger to help him when the Red Daggers and the Clandestines always fought. Here's my big thing. Because you would have probably thought that the Clandestines would have been the final big bad in episode 6. And it may feel kind of like anticlimactic for their arc, because they kind of went out in episode 5. I think two things. Number one, Department of Damage Control is going to be very important. Right now, they're a stand-in for S.H.I.E.L.D. because that's kind of not a thing. And Sword's off on the side, but that's still kind of not a thing. So Department of Damage Control is that governmental presence. And like I said earlier, if you just are coming in now, if you know the comic book saga, especially where Miss Marvel factors in, there's yet another governmental type agency that gets created. The acronym is CRADLE, and they're going after underaged mutants. And the reason why they do that is because the American government put out a law that basically, they call it Kamala's Law, without getting into why. But, Miss Marvel factored into a whole fact pattern where they were like, you know what? The government was like, you know what? We can't control all superheroes. Maybe at most we can maybe get them to register their identities and stuff, because that was a whole original impetus behind the comic book version of Civil War, which obviously played out differently here in the MCU. And it had to, because they didn't introduce mutants until now. But they came out with Kamala's Law saying we can at least keep or restrict minors from using their powers until at least maybe they're adults and they can handle themselves more responsibly, just to protect the public. So for a time in the comic book version, it was illegal for anyone under 21, and that included Miles Morales, Spider-Man, Ironheart, a whole bunch of them. They couldn't use their powers. Nova, they're going to do a series for Nova now in phase 5, I think. So I think down the road, you're going to have Avengers, you're going to have young Avengers / new Avengers. you're going to get Cradle. It's going to be an offshoot of Department of Damage Control. So I do think that, yes, it was important to see Department of Damage Control highlighted in this last episode. I don't think the Clandestines are dead. I think their souls went on to Through the Veil, but their physical bodies dropped here because they're Jinn. So, you know, they might be very different creatures, how their corporeal form is in a totally different dimension. It makes sense. So I don't think they were truly killed off. I do still think that Najma's decisions were made the way they were made to protect this world only because she left Kamran behind in it, not because she cared to save it. And I think she said to Kamala, I know what I'm doing. She did. They're not dead. They didn't just kill them off that handily. But that's something we might see play out later. But I think DODC is important moving forward because they're going to factor into the whole Secret Wars thing and the Secret Invasion thing. So Secret Invasion, they're reshooting a whole bunch of scenes. And I think it's because not only how Damage Control shows up in it, you might see a flash of Kamala in there or not. I don't know. But I'm very sure that she is going to factor into a final boss fight with Kang. So make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Live and on the replay, when this goes into replay mode, I'll make sure it's the first comment and it's pinned. You're going to have the playlist listing. But the playlist for all of the Miss Marvel videos, make sure you see my Nega Bands video. That's a popular one. And I'm glad I made it because I was right, especially how Carol and Kamala have swapped places. That's what happened with the original version of Captain Mar-Vell in the comics. He and another individual swapped places, and they had to swap back and forth until they were able to solve the dimension swapping that the Nega Bands caused. It's okay if the Nega Bands are Kree technology. They were in the comics. They could be here too. That does not change my theory. I was right. Mike says, I did a poll on Twitter last night, only 11 votes on the end credit scene. 64% believed we were going to get Captain Marvel. 18% thought we were going to get podcaster Scott Lang. 9% thought both or none. Rami says, I immediately remembered your video when I watched that scene. Thank you. You know, especially when some Marvel theorists were saying, no, I don't think those are Nega Bands. I don't think so. I was like, no. Sticking to it. I know why. And that that post-credit scene was perfect. Now, I've already said this in some of my other pre-edited videos that are in the playlist that I've pinned down below. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. If you haven't seen all those videos, make sure you do. And I'm a real lawyer. So after, you know, I have a couple of Miss Marvel videos I want to do. We're going to be getting She-Hulk in August. So I'm a lawyer like She-Hulk is. In fact, my prized possession. This is a collector's edition. It's hard to get a hold of this version of She-Hulk as the lawyer, right? So this is She-Hulk lawyer form. And this was a Funko Pop exclusive from the 2018 Spring Convention. So she's a little hard to get a hold of. But I'm a lawyer, and my husband always, since we first started dating, thought I was more She-Hulk than anything else. So I am tickled pink to be able to cover She-Hulk. I'm going to do all the types of stuff that other Marvel theorists will do with She-Hulk. But unlike, no offense to them, because I'm subscribed to them, I love them too. Heavy spoilers, New Rock Stars, Screen Crush. Ryan Airy was a teacher for years. He and I are age contemporaries too. And her outfit was different, said Mike Me Porter. Yes, her outfit was different. Mike Stan, sorry, Shill Porter, because you changed your account name, which is fine. Yes, her outfit was different. The reaction that she had, and she was like, oh, no, you know, because this is a super fan, and that was like too much for her. You knew it wasn't Kamala, wasn't dressed like Kamala, and she only had the residual purple trace on her hands. This wasn't like the thick Noir kind. So I think they did enough to differentiate. And so comic book fans should know whether it's the original Captain Marvel story, Captain Mar Vel, Vell, originally from the comics. And anybody who understands the Kree negabands, you understand the whole thing. They swapped dimensions. So Carol has to figure out what the heck. She's going to see this family and ask them what's up. Then they're going to realize their daughter's gone. So she's probably going to go get Kamala. And how they end up running across Veronica Rambeau, I don't know. But I know all three of them team up in the Marvels. Who's the big bad in the Marvels? I'm telling you, Kang. And I've said in other videos at times, and I do have a standalone video about the connection between Kamala and Ant-Man, and I'm so excited because none of the other Marvel theorists seem to be talking about it. Shazam! Although that's DC, sorry. But I told you all, there's a reason why they had so many Easter eggs with Ant-Man. One way or another, we are going to get a tie-in, a callback, a post-credit scene, something that's going to show you Kamala and how she factors in to Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 Quantumania. And to be honest, the whole dimension swapping thing, my guess is right now that she's in the quantum dimension, which is fine. She'll be fine there. And I told you guys, there's at least 3 major Ant-Man Easter eggs for a reason. And it's not just to tease Ant-Man and the Wasp. The way these Easter eggs tend to go when you see the 30,000-foot view, especially if you've been a comic fan and not just simply an MCU fan, not that there's anything wrong with that, is that you understand there's a whole lattice work of stuff going on here. And you're like, oh, wow. So Ant-Man's going to get seriously hurt. There's going to be one or more of his team members killed. They could be offing Hank Pym. I go into like why I think these things, what these Easter eggs mean as I see them, including the whole podcast and the mural and all those things that you've seen up through now. I'm going to do an updated version of it because now I'm doubling down on it, especially given the post-credit scene. But Kamala is gonna one way or another factor or tie into the quantum realm and to Kang. She has to because they are negabands and it's important not just for the whole swap out with Carol Danvers and what's gonna play into the Marvels. Kang is a much tougher critter to crack than Thanos. I know Thanos and Kang have gone at it and they're both very strong big bads, but Kang is beyond savage. And he is super powerful and he's got negaband type powers and no one else does. So even Captain Marvel going binary is not going to be enough to just one-on-one face off with him. So that's why I think it's important you're going to get the three ladies meeting up in Marvel, the Marvels. But watch the videos in that playlist. Okay, because I do want to wrap up here. Negabands. Thank you, Mike. Congratulations on the negabands thing. I remember that. You were right. Thank you. Romney says, do you have any theories about a plot or antagonist in the Marvels? Does Kamala's class as mutant factor into her story with Danvers beyond the bands only? I think it factors in heavily going forward. I think Bruno going off to Caltech is important because he's going to do work with a lot of people. He mentioned Eric Selvig. Eric Selvig survived on through Thor, Love and Thunder. He might end up being an intern for Eric at some point. He's going to factor in, and he and Eric will probably do work on the mutants. And they will start probably identifying other people whose powers will pop up. I definitely think they've introduced pretty much all of the new mutants now, and some of them, their powers have manifested already, and some of them have not. So, like, you have Cassie Lang's stature. After what happens to her family, I do think she's going to take up the Ant-Man mantle. So we've introduced her a couple of times, and they've accelerated her age. Well, she wasn't snapped, and Scott was. But that's going to be important. Ironheart's being introduced. I know that Scarlet Witch's twins will come back, probably from another dimension or something. Because if you think Scarlet Witch is dead, she's not. She's been signed on to a couple other things, and I don't think they're just going to be flashbacks. You've got, what is it, Patriot, the grandfather, the grandson of one of the characters in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I mean, you have all the young mutants who are already one way or another mutating, or something kicked off a mutation and got things to activate in them. Like the super soldier serum probably lives on to the grandson, and that gets activated on its own as he continues to go through puberty. So I do think that she's going to continue to be, mutant wise, a lens through which a lot of things get shot. They didn't just send Bruno off to Caltech just cause. So that's going to factor in him mentioning Eric Selvig and studying his work and understanding it. Come on. Who's Eric going to work with now? Just Darcy? She's going to fetch coffee and make photocopies, but I don't think she's going to sit there and have big, breakthroughs with Selvig. But the plot of the Marvels, they did say that they flipped. I mentioned some of this in other edited videos I did. They mentioned that they flipped the release of Ant-Man and the Wasp 3 and the Marvels. The Marvels were supposed to have come out first, and then Ant-Man next. They flipped it. Now, they said, and I'm not saying that there isn't a kernel of truth in this, that, the post-production work and all of that stuff was finished. The CGI was finished being rendered or whatever. And so Ant-Man and the Wasp is more of a finished product. So that's why we're releasing it first. But then news came out that they were reshooting entire sections of the Marvels, and that the plot has been tightly kept under wraps. Not so much the same as Quantumania. Like, we know that Bill Murray is going to come in. He might be the mayor of Chronopolis, that the city of Chronopolis is going to factor in. There have been theories that they're going to kill off Hank Pym at the very least, and that Scott Lang might be injured. So you definitely have leaks, and those have been pre-existing before even the flip of the release dates. So I'm thinking that the Marvels is being rewritten to the point that it's being rewritten to factor not just Kamala more into it, but I do think the Nega Band connection is going to be big into it. And I do think that my guess is that they're not going to kill off Kang in that movie. That'd be kind of too quick. We only first got introduced to him via Immortus, or He Who Remains, at the end, the very last episode of Loki, the original season. So he's going to show up and factor in, of course, in Quantumania. They're not going to kill him off there. He's going to show up in the Marvels. And I do think that part of the reason for the reshoots in the Marvels is my guess is they're also going to start injecting more mutant stuff into that. And I do think that he will not be killed off. We're still in phase 4, although I think they're wrapping up phase 4, right? After the end of this year, really. So we're going into phases 5 and 6. I know they have the overall plan set for those. So I don't think they're killing off Kang during phase 4 going into phase 5. He's the next really big bad. And he is so complicated with all of the time travel and all the dimensions, not realms but dimensions that he can go to, and how many different versions of himself. And then what Sylvie did to He Who Remains, and I agree with some of the Marvel theorists, he was egging her on. He knew how this was going to go. He kept the free will thing in there to make it interesting because he was bored, but he knew she was going to kill him. Again, spoilers galore. You don't come on these lives and not think that there's spoilers, and I put the thing down there about spoilers in the comments. So I do think that Kang is going to be such a multifaceted critter. I mean, please, we haven't even mentioned Ramatut. Although there was a Kang Easter egg in Moon Knight. There were other scenes that were cut from Moon Knight, but the one scene that wasn't was you had the pyramid Kang reference on the back of the denim jacket of the kid that cuts off his little scarf and falls to his death. What was that? An episode 2 or 3 of Moon Knight. So he's like, prays on it, and he dies. But you had a quick flash look at the jacket. That's kind of a reference to King Ramatut. And actually in Loki, there was the pyramid when Mobius was driving around all like a wild man in the pizza car. So, but there's so much storytelling that can be done with Kang. He's not a character that just gets defeated and disappears in the comics. He's still a big bad now in the Marvel comic book saga, so I cannot imagine that they're just going to kill him off before Phase 4 or Phase 5 is over. I don't know if they ever really kill him off because of just all the different ways that he can show up throughout how many different timelines now and how many different universes now. So this is way bigger than Thanos. So anyway, you guys have any other questions for me? Oh, Mike says, isn't it incredible how we're talking about future projects and we know that we're getting them soon? Like She-Hulk, Marvel's, Ant-Man, Secret Invasion, and many, many more. Also remember that all that we have already seen. I know, I don't think ever in cinematic history have they ever had such a huge, ongoing, overarching project like this. I've never seen it. And then it goes into different forms of not necessarily media, but different platforms. So you have the movies. You have the you have the limited series that they did on the discs, but now they brought it in, like Thor and his roommate and all that, that they brought into the streaming platform of Disney Plus. And now you have Disney Plus, because Disney bought Marvel. So, and then you have comic books now that are kind of catching up with stuff that's done in the movies. But then stuff that's done in the movies and Disney Plus is taking in stuff directly and then indirectly from the comics. Never have you seen this before. So this is a huge triumph, no matter how many more phases we get. So this is absolutely amazing. So yeah, I'm in wonderment of it, which is why also I think, even though I did that one kind of trolling video, I'm going to stay away from trolls and just be like, wow, look at what we're getting, look at all the coolness, and try to catch people up on like stray loose things that they might not have seen or appreciated or understood. Yeah, there's fun little Easter eggs, but like I knew when we saw the Living Tribunal that they were going into the cosmic phase, and I knew that they were going to bring him in, and he does tie in with She-Hulk, not to jump ahead too much, but She-Hulk ends up leaving the practice of earthbound law to transcend and go to cosmic law, which is the highest law, period, because she's such a darn good lawyer. And I do think that She-Hulk will be a multi-seasonal thing, because unless it somehow flops, is on fire and flops, you could just be telling like Law and Order stories with a comedic bent to it forever. I mean, how many seasons of Law and Order is there? I can't bear to watch those things because it's too much like work. I don't do criminal law, though. I should say that. So Mike says, I think after Ant-Man, Quantumania Phase 4 is done. I think so. When will we get a Kevin Feige statue? I think they will do stuff like that, but much later on, I think that they will. And who knows? Like shawarma might be like Kevin Feige's like most favorite meal, right? Because this was all back in the Avengers at that one post-credit scene where they were all finally eating shawarma. But I think they don't want to do anything too soon because of Stan Lee's death, although he's been dead for 2 years now. I can't believe it. Because of all those cameos. Those were like the best. Those are the best Easter eggs ever. All the time. And he even showed up, as you guys might know, in the first Venom post-credit scene, which was cool. Or towards the end of Venom. I don't know if that was a post-credit scene. Memory serves. So I think that they will do homages to Feige as the years go on, but I think they're tastefully keeping some distance between starting in with things like that, however they present themselves, because of the whole Stan Lee thing. But I do think they'll do it. I do. Do you guys have any other questions? Do you have anything that you think I missed? Again, remember, this is my first run through. I will be doing an updated version of the more recent Ant-Man Easter egg and how I think this post-credit scene plays into everything. The post-credit scene with the swap. I think that does connect Kamala immediately to Quantumania, as I've been saying all along. Even if it's a glancing blow connection, because she so fights Kang. Even in the comics, she ends up clashing with Kang. And I'm not even talking about the whole Kamala Kang thing that happened in an alternate universe. Okay. Mike said he has promised 10 years of movies in the theaters, so Feige and the Phases will be around for at least a decade. I guess a decade total, right, Mike? I mean, I certainly hope longer, don't get me wrong. I'm just going to have a quick drink. I'm going to put away my She-Hulk. You guys let me know on the live and on the replay. You know, please, on the replay. I would love to see what you guys do too there. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. I know we're going to be between Disney Plus releases because She-Hulk isn't going to be released until August. But I'm still going to do, I've already got a playlist going for She-Hulk with 2 videos in there already. I talk about where she works in the comics, and it already ties into what's definitely going to go on in the series. They're putting her on a different coast, but I don't think that really changes up too much about the interesting backstory of the firm that she worked for otherwise. And I do think there's a little bit of drama with the head partner that may or may not play out in episode 1. So this is multifaceted off the jump if you know the She-Hulk comics. So I'm definitely going to do some table setting stuff and some foundational stuff for her, kind of like I did with Ms. Marvel before the drops. We only have a couple weeks in between, but I'm also going to be doing lives on my channel every week. So if you like live stream replays, more direct involvement, that's going to continue to go on here. And then otherwise, I'm going to be putting out like 3-4 videos that are pre-edited a week with my video editor, Barney's assistants, because if you think I'm doing all that, you could just forget about it. Trinity, I know. Hey, Second Stream Marvel, what's going on? Mike says, thanks for the stream. Oh, probably longer. I think probably longer than a decade. Oh my God, Trinity, how are you doing knowing that that mutants are officially canon in the MCU for Earth 616? I was like, oh my God. And I loved Kamala's reaction to it. It was such a typical teenage reaction. She was like, whatever, it's just another label they're going to put on us. Give me the keys. You know, she didn't care. What did you think? I know Second Street Marvel, if you haven't subscribed to him, make sure you do. I still owe him a video with a shout out. I think I'm going to talk about, as he suggested to me, feminism and how it's evolving in the MCU. And I'm going to make it like the top most powerful women currently in Marvel / the MCU. Of course, Miss Marvel is going to be there. Of course, Carol Danvers is going to be there. But you're going to have 8 other additional folks who are going to be in there. And we're going to discuss how Marvel has treated them cinematically versus the comic book version. Because I'm going to tell you now, I have not seen any of She-Hulk yet. That'd be cool. Maybe one day I'll be elevated enough where I could see it. But I'm hoping that they do a little less trashy version of She-Hulk in the She-Hulk Disney Plus series. I mean, I know she's out there dating, mating, and stuff like that. And that was very key clutch to She-Hulk from the comics, right? So this is my Funko Pop She-Hulk. There you go. So I know they had to keep some of that in there, but they kind of made her so cheesecake at points that, I mean, listen, I'm a straight female, so what do I know? I was just like, Wow. Okay. It's amazing she could put that, gravity defying body in a suit and go to court and not be screamed at by a judge. But all right. But I owe Trinity or Second Street Marvel a video because they suggested that I do that. But they've done really great work on their channel. I'm a fan. Talked about the Emerald Tablet in the Eternals and how that kind of is important to some background and some storytelling in the MCU. This is such a rich universe. It's never been a better time to be a creator, a fan of Marvel, whether it's the comics, the MCU, Disney Plus, or all three of those things. So I'm sure that Second Street Marvel is going to be doing a breakdown of this episode and the series holistically on their channel. So make sure that you subscribe to them if you have not already. Alrighty. And Mike, it seems like to me that you're more of just a consumer than I'd recommend you, but it doesn't seem like you put content out on your channel, really. So but if you want me to give you a shout out, go and give Mike some love too. Mike Stan. He changed it. Mike Stan Shill Porter. The MCO rules. Sign Stan Shill. Oh, I know. I love it. So even though I have my other Stacey Storino content marketing channel and I've been neglecting it as of late, the goal is to put a live stream and a replay out there once a week or a recorded video once a week. Like I have a recorded video for this week I can put up. You just need some consistency on a YouTube channel or the algorithms really don't love you. I'm a promoter. Well, I appreciate you. You are a very important part of this whole ecosystem. Without you guys, there'd be no us. So I definitely bow to all creators and consumers and those of us who are hybrid. And that's it. I've been going on for like 2.5 hours. Holy moly. I promote you and Trinity on Twitter. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Trinity does an awesome job. You want really in-depth Easter egg breakdowns and stuff like that. Cannot recommend them higher. All right. So I'm getting off now because I need to eat breakfast. I'm getting lightheaded and I have to put my Funko Pop away. So definitely there will be videos coming out for Thursday and Friday that are pre-edited. And I may or may not do live streams over the weekend. I have a kid in football, so kind of catch can on there. Thank you, Rami. Great show overall. It was fun. See ya. On my Twitter, I promote and put out dad jokes. What's your handle on Twitter, Mike? I don't know if they'll let you handle or live link on someone else's channel, but you could just put it out there. Thanks. You are welcome, guys. All righty. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't, and let me know in the comments down below if there are videos that you want me to put out that have to do with Marvel. And I will definitely give you shout out or credit in the video like I've done Mike in the past. And I will be doing to Trinity or Second Street Marvel probably in next week's videos. Because I just have like 2-3 things I want to put out about Miss Marvel, and then I'm going to get to that. Oh, it's like a phone number. Oh my goodness. Woo! I'm not on Twitter too much. I have to probably get involved with Twitter a little bit more. Think of something. You can put it in the comments afterwards. I could care less. Enjoy. All right, I will talk to everybody later. Have a great week. Bye.